Chapter 1402. The Imperial Tutor and the 7 human commanders couldn't even protect themselves, let alone cover the retreat of the human army. The doppelgangers of the Blood God were still releasing all kinds of poisonous plagues and black gas of death onto the battlefield below. Hundreds of thousands of people in the human army, who were retreating in panic, were shrouded by the black gas and poisonous fog. Soon, they were corroded into bones and blood. In addition, the doppelgangers of the Blood God also used the power of 9 tribulations to release the earthquake tribulation, flood tribulation, and flowing fire tribulation. A huge earthquake occurred on the battlefield within a radius of several hundred miles. Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. The sky collapsed and the earth caved in. Endless floodwaters gushed out from the ground, rolling up raging waves and drowning countless human armies. In the sky, wisps of flames also drifted, forming into balls of violent fireballs that blasted towards the human army below. Loud rumbling sounds rang out incessantly. The earth-shattering power was as if the end of the world had arrived. Every second, thousands of human soldiers were killed. None of their corpses were intact. If things went on like this, by the time the 3 million-plus human army returned to the Heaven Dragon Pass, they would have long been wiped out. Seeing that the situation was so critical, Ji Tianqing rushed towards the Devil Race experts without hesitation. He used the stealth step and approached a doppelganger of the Blood God. He attacked from a distance of 10,000 feet behind him. "Draw your sword!" Holding the sword of Burial of Heaven in his right hand, he suddenly unsheathed it. A huge purple sword light that was 10 feet long instantly crossed the sky and slashed the doppelganger of the Blood God. The doppelganger of the Blood God didn't even have time to react or dodge before it was smashed into pieces by the sword light of thunder. Bang! Its enormous body was shattered into tens of thousands of bloody light shards, which were surrounded by dense thunderbolts. Along with a series of crackling thunderclaps, countless blood-red light fragments were destroyed by the violent thunderclaps and dissipated on the spot. This doppelganger of the Blood God of the LV5 Soul Refining Realm was killed by Ji Tianqing in one strike. It was completely obliterated. Although the power of the 9 heavens divine thunder wasn't enough to severely injure the Blood God, who was at the primordial soul realm, the 9 heavens divine thunder wasn't enough to severely injure the Blood God. However, against a Blood God at the soul refining realm, the 9 heavens lightning was absolutely invincible. The sudden change made the other Blood God's sons and demon commanders turn pale with fright, and they all looked terrified. They hurriedly looked around and released their soul power, searching for Ji Tianqing's figure. However, Ji Tianqing used God Concealment Step and silently rushed to the side of another Blood God's son. Swish! Another sword thrust out, and a dot of cold light suddenly appeared, then quickly disappeared. In the next moment, a cold light blossomed inside the Blood God's body, and an earth-shattering sound erupted. Boom! Dazzling cold light, accompanied by dazzling purple lightning, rose in the night sky and turned into a huge mushroom cloud. Coincidentally, the mushroom cloud covered an area of 5 kilometers, including the 2 Blood Gods' illusions. The terrifying sword light and the violent lightning instantly blasted the 2 Blood Gods' illusions into pieces. When the sword light and lightning dissipated, the 2 Blood Gods' sons were completely obliterated. Ji Tianqing's figure disappeared again, and he began to assassinate the other Blood God's sons. This scene made Demon Commander Dark Knight and the others very frightened. They didn't dare to attack the Imperial Tutor and the others with full strength. They were all vigilant and on guard. The pressure on the Imperial Tutor and the other human commanders was greatly reduced, and they all secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Although they didn't see Ji Tianqing's figure, they knew that someone had come. However, they knew that an expert had come to help, and that person was definitely Ji Tianqing. In the human camp, only Ji Tianqing had the power of the divine lightning and could instantly kill a Blood God's son with one strike. In just a few seconds, Ji Tianqing found another opportunity to launch a fatal attack. Without a doubt, Another blood god's son had died under the burial of Heaven's sword and was obliterated on the spot. The demon commanders and blood gods' sons became more and more frightened. They gradually tightened the encirclement and joined forces to guard the surroundings. Demon Commander Dark Knight roared in anger. He controlled a huge black ghost banner and used a powerful secret technique. He summoned thousands of demons and ghosts and sealed off the sky for dozens of miles. He swore to drag Ji Tianxing out. However, with the strength of the demon commanders and blood god's sons, they couldn't see through Ji Tianxing's divine concealment step. In the next few seconds, Ji Tianxing attacked 4 times in a row. With just 4 strikes, he killed 4 blood god's sons. With the soul refinement realm blood god's sons killed, the remaining demon commanders and soul refinement realm experts were all scared out of their wits and their souls trembled. When Ji Tianxing attacked for the 5th time, another demon commander was killed on the spot. The number of demon race powerhouses continued to decrease. Demon Commander Dark Knight and the others already had the intention to retreat. They turned around and fled into the distance. The morale of the Imperial Tutor and the human race commanders was greatly boosted. They were all very grateful to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was about to chase after Demon Commander Dark Knight and the others when the Imperial Tutor hurriedly shouted, "Tianxing, don't chase after them. It's more important to cover our retreat." Ji Tianxing quickly looked at the battlefield below and saw millions of undead skeletons and tens of millions of demon race troops frantically chasing after the human race army. During this period of time, another 200,000 human soldiers died on the battlefield. The number of the human race army was reduced to only about 3 million. Therefore, he gave up chasing after Demon Commander Dark Knight and the others and quickly rushed to the battlefield below. Swish! In a few breaths, he flew above the demon race army. Looking at the undead skeletons' army charging at the forefront, he did not hesitate to summon the celestial godfire cauldron. His hands formed an incantation gesture, manipulating the divine cauldron to launch an attack. Attract the celestial dipper, pour out the earth fire, burn all things, kill gods and exterminate demons. Under his control, the celestial godfire cauldron flew to the sky and violently expanded to the size of a palace, bursting out a silver-white brilliance and dark red flames that soared into the sky. The huge divine cauldron slowly tilted, and dark red flames that blotted out the sky and covered the earth gushed out from the mouth of the cauldron, pouring down on the battlefield below like a monstrous flood. Boom! The endless earth fire drowned hundreds of thousands of undead skeletons and immediately spread out, turning into a vast sea of fire. Immediately, those undead skeletons who were not afraid of death and bravely charging forward were burned to ashes by the violent red flames. The dark brown mountains and earth were also melted by the earth fire into red magma that flowed between the mountains and rivers. In just a few breaths, more than half of the million undead skeletons were killed. The demon race army, which followed closely behind the undead skeletons, was immediately blocked by the raging sea of fire and had to take a detour or retreat to avoid it. Ji Tianxing manipulated the divine cauldron to release the silver-white celestial dipper wind, blowing it toward the sea of fire below. With the help of the wind, the fire spread out violently and rapidly, turning a radius of 200 miles into a world of fire and magma. Chapter 1403. For a time, flames soared into the sky and lava flowed across the battlefield. The whistling of the heavenly astral divine wind, the muffled sounds of the lava melting the earth, and the wails and screams of countless demon soldiers reverberated in the night sky. The demon army's offensive was temporarily blocked, and they had to think of another way. Many demon experts formed a battle formation and joined forces to cast powerful spells, bombarding Ji Tianxing. Many demon generals led elite soldiers to quickly bypass the lava area and continue to pursue the human army. There were even some powerful demon kings who flew across the sky in groups, crossing the lava area. In short, the battlefield was a mess, and the demons' momentum was thwarted. and this situation was caused by Ji Tianxing alone. However, the heavenly astral divine wind and flowing fire released by the divine cauldron could only obstruct the demon army, temporarily stopping the army's charge. The demon army's numbers were simply too great, as many as 10 million. After a short 20 breaths, the millions of demon army joined forces to cast spells, destroying the lava sea within a radius of 200 miles. The flames that illuminated the sky gradually extinguished, and the lava sea quickly cooled down, turning into scorched ruins emitting black smoke. The spirit masters hiding in the army cast spells to summon hundreds of thousands of undead skeletons, taking the lead to step over the high-temperature ruins to pursue the human army. Countless demon army followed closely behind, charging forward without regard for their own safety. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing immediately frowned, and his expression became somewhat unsightly. Damn it, no matter how powerful the heavenly astral divine fire cauldron is, it can't deal with an army of 10 million. With my strength alone, it's almost impossible to intercept the demon army, and even more impossible to cover the retreat of the human army to Heaven Dragon Pass. With a heavy heart, he considered how to cover the retreat of the human army. At this moment, dozens of blood-red and purple flames suddenly lit up in the sky, as well as huge saber, spear, and sword shadows. Dozens of powerful spell attacks came from all directions, immediately drowning his figure. Those were the spells released by thousands of demon experts using a battle formation, just to kill him on the spot. He hurriedly spread out his golden wings to protect himself. Bam bam bam! The overwhelming spell attacks bombarded him one after another, causing deafening explosions. He was blasted down from the sky and smashed into the ruins below, creating a huge crater in the scorched earth. Although he only suffered some internal injuries, the power of the golden wings had been exhausted. They retracted back into his body and could no longer be used. In his fury, he rushed out of the deep pit in a flash and flew into the sky. He used all his strength to perform a lost skill. Meteor shower. His entire body lit up with flames that soared into the sky, releasing a tyrannical and valiant aura. His robes fluttered violently. As he waved his palms and cast a mysterious spell, flames suddenly appeared in the gloomy sky. Dark red flames lit up the sky like the red clouds when the sun rose. Countless people had the misconception that the sun had risen early, and they all looked up at the sky. In the next moment, huge fireballs that blotted out the sky and covered the earth poured down like a torrential downpour, bombarding the huge battlefield. Boom 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 boom. Countless fireballs landed in the midst of the Devil Race army and exploded with loud noises that shook the 9 heavens. The shattered flames spread in all directions and turned into a boundless sea of fire, drowning hundreds of thousands of demon army soldiers. At least hundreds of thousands of demon army soldiers were directly hit by the fireballs and burned to ashes on the spot. Millions of demon army soldiers were also drowned by the sea of fire in a radius of 50 kilometers. They suffered heavy casualties and let out heart-wrenching screams and howls. However, the wildly spreading sea of fire was quickly extinguished by the combined efforts of the demon army when it only covered a radius of 50 kilometers. Thousands of demon army experts used a combined battle formation to release powerful spells and sent Ji Tianxing flying again, landing on the battlefield dozens of kilometers away. Bam bam bam! This time, he did not have the golden wings to protect him. After being hit by hundreds of spells, he immediately suffered heavy injuries and staggered a little. He hurriedly used the spirit concealment step and hid in the sky. He secretly took out a pill and consumed it, circulating his energy to suppress his injuries. The demon army launched another attack and seized the opportunity to launch a pincer attack on the human army. Seeing batches of human army soldiers being slaughtered one after another and their corpses lying in pools of blood, Ji Tianxing was so furious that his eyes almost popped out. Fortunately, the imperial tutor and several commanders arrived in time. Everyone struggled to support their seriously injured bodies and unleash their secret arts to attack the demon army and block the momentum of the demon army. Under the cover of the commanders, the human army retreated in a panic and gradually withdrew from the demon army camp area. As long as the army crossed the 200 kilometers deep valley, they could withdraw to the Heaven Dragon Mountain Pass. However, that distance of 200 miles was an incomparably bitter road to hell. Every step had to be filled with lives. No one knew if the 3 million human army could withdraw to the Heaven Dragon Mountain Pass. Demon Commander Dark Knight led several demon commanders and a large number of demon army experts to pursue and entangle the Imperial Tutor and the others. Their purpose was very obvious. They did not seek to kill the Imperial Tutor and the others, but only to delay them. In this way, it was impossible for the human army to withdraw to the Heaven Dragon Mountain Pass smoothly. They were bound to be slaughtered by the demon army. Dawn had already passed, and the white of the sky appeared with a touch of red clouds. The long night was about to pass, and a new day was about to arrive. However, the situation on the battlefield was getting more and more critical. The majority of the human army soldiers might not be able to see the sun tomorrow. The Imperial Tutor and the commanders witnessed with their own eyes the massacre of countless human army soldiers. Their corpses were lying in a pool of blood and mud, and they were extremely indignant. The E-Prince and the Filial Prince were already riddled with scars and bloodstains. However, the two of them roared angrily and rushed out of the crowd, charging at Demon Commander Dark Knight and the others without any regard for their own safety, recklessly using their unique skills. Demon Commander Dark Knight and the others were startled for a moment before immediately launching a counterattack. The two of them were beaten back again and again, seriously injured and vomiting blood. However, the two of them still rushed forward without hesitation, firmly entangling Demon Commander Dark Knight and the others. Seeing this scene, the Imperial Tutor and the several human commanders were full of worry and puzzlement. "Princes, what are you doing? Don't be impulsive. Come back quickly, don't make unnecessary sacrifices. Only by joining hands can we have a chance to retreat to Heaven Dragon Pass." The Imperial Tutor and the commanders all tried to persuade the two princes. However, the two of them did not care, as if they were determined to die. No matter what, they had to entangle the demon commanders. Bang! Following a dull explosion, Demon Commander Dark Knight's fist struck the E-Prince, sending him flying back. Blood splashed out from his body, filling the sky. The Divine General of the West Wilderness hurriedly went forward to catch him, wanting to take him away. However, the E-Prince broke free from the Divine General of the West Wilderness's grasp. His face covered in blood, he looked at the crowd and shouted in a low voice, "You all quickly cover the army and retreat to Heaven Dragon Pass. We will bring up the rear." At that time, it was us who suggested to the Emperor that we should take the initiative to attacking the demon army's camp in the middle of the night. It was us who were eager for quick success and lost our heads in a momentary victory. That was why we made such a ridiculous suggestion and made such a big mistake. The E-Prince was drenched in blood from head to toe. His messy hair and blood-soaked robes fluttered in the wind. His expression was bleak, and he said in a sorrowful tone, "Now, more than half of the 6 million troops of my race have been killed or injured. Even if we retreat to Heaven Dragon Pass, we will not be able to defend this barrier. My race's momentum is gone, and we are the main culprit. Even if we die 10,000 times, it will still be difficult to atone for our sins." Chapter 1404. The E-Prince's words were filled with remorse. His tone was very solemn and stirring, with an unwavering determination. Only death could clear one's mind. The Imperial Tutor and the other commanders all fell silent, their hearts heavy and sorrowful. They looked at the figures of the E-Prince and the Filial Prince with complicated gazes. Then, the Imperial Tutor took a deep breath, and decisively issued an order. "Commanders, listen to my order. Follow this seat to cover the retreat of our human army." As his voice fell, The commanders all turned around and retreated with him, covering the retreat of the human army. The prince and the filial prince both revealed expressions of relief, as if the shackles in their hearts had been unlocked, washing away the remorse and sins in their hearts. They charged towards Demon Commander Dark Knight and the others without any complaints, using their ultimate techniques at all costs to stop the charge of the demon commanders. Resplendent magical brilliance, all kinds of dazzling light, lit up in the gloomy sky, blossoming with gorgeous splendor. One after another, oppressive sounds exploded in the sky, fiercely reverberating. The prince and the filial prince were besieged by the demon commanders. Their injuries continued to worsen, and their strength continued to weaken, looking more and more miserable. But they did not yield an inch. Even if their bodies were smashed to pieces, they still had to entangle the demon commanders. On the battlefield below, 100,000 soldiers charged out of the human army. They were the former subordinates of the two princes, the most loyal and devoted death warriors. Seeing that the two princes wanted to use their lives as the price to stop the pursuit of the demon commanders, they also volunteered to step forward, bringing up the rear of the human army. Charge! Kill! Our heads can be cut off, our blood can flow, we will fight the demons, we will not turn back even if we die. If there is a next life, we will definitely kill all the demons in the world. The 100,000 soldiers fought bravely while bathed in blood, letting out solemn and vigorous roars. They were all determined to die, using their bodies as a wall, tenaciously resisting the charge of the demon army. The Imperial Tutor and the commanders also desperately used their secret techniques to kill the demon army on the ground, covering the retreat of the human army. The human army crossed the blood-soaked valley one after another, continuously approaching the Heaven Dragon Pass. 150 kilometers, 120 kilometers, 100 kilometers inside the Heaven Dragon Pass, Long Yunxiao's hundreds of thousands of troops were operating the ancient divine formation at full power, waiting to welcome the human army into the pass. Long Yunxiao stood in the golden light barrier, looking at the tragic battlefield in the distance. His heart was incomparably heavy, and his complexion was very unsightly. His fists were also clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. He saw with his own eyes that the human army was being hunted down by the devil race, their numbers constantly dwindling. He had witnessed the two princes and 100,000 men of sacrifice covering the human army at the cost of their lives. However, he was powerless to do anything. He could only watch helplessly. At this moment, he only hated that he could not become a powerhouse like Ji Tianxing, who was invincible on the battlefield, wantonly slaughtering the demon race soldiers to vent the monstrous hatred in his heart. Before long, the fiend army slaughtered the 100,000 death-worn soldiers to the last. Millions of demon race soldiers flowed across the mountains and rivers like a black tide, about to drown the human army. High up in the sky, along with two earth-shattering booms, Prince and Xiao Prince, who were on the verge of death, brazenly detonated themselves. They detonated their physical bodies, souls, and all their magic power, turning into two seven-colored mushroom clouds that bloomed in the sky, echoing across the land. That was the final sound of their lives. From now on, the Prince and the Xiao Prince no longer existed in this world. Their bodies and souls were destroyed, and it was impossible for them to even reincarnate. Fortunately, the power of their self-detonation was very strong, injuring several demon commanders and forcing Demon Commander Dark Knight back dozens of kilometers. However, after a few breaths, several demon commanders charged over again, using secret techniques to slaughter the human army. At the critical moment, Ji Tianxing finally arrived. He openly appeared in the sky, holding the sword of burial of heaven, and used his secret techniques to block the attacks of the demon commanders. Then, he faced 5 demon commanders and 4 demon race powerhouses alone, using all kinds of trump cards and secret techniques to entangle 9 demon race powerhouses. The two sides fought high in the sky for a quarter of an hour, exchanging more than 300 moves. In the end, Ji Tianxing killed 3 demon commanders and 2 demon race powerhouses. Only Demon Commander Dark Knight and 3 others were still alive, but they were all seriously injured and retreated in a sorry state. Ji Tianxing's strength was almost exhausted, and he was also seriously injured. His whole body was covered with bloody wounds, and a dense black qi lingered around him. His clothes were ragged, and his long hair draped over his shoulders, stained with dark red blood, dancing in the wind. When the orange sun slowly rose from the horizon, the human army finally retreated to the Heaven Dragon Pass, pouring into the golden light barrier like a tide. The Imperial Tutor and the various commanders were still outside the pass, resisting the assault of the demon race army, and covering the retreat of the human army. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky above the Heaven Dragon Pass, motionless like a statue. His body stood tall and straight, as mighty and domineering as a deity. His left hand was behind his back, and his right hand was holding the sword of burial of heaven, pointing obliquely at the earth below, his blood-stained robe fluttering in the wind. An iron-blooded domineering aura, looking down on the world, and looking down on the common people, was emitted from his body, intimidating the surrounding several hundred li. The human soldiers who fled into the Heaven Dragon Pass looked up at his imposing figure, revealing a relieved expression, their eyes full of fanaticism and worship. The devil soldiers outside the Tianlong Mountain Pass looked at him with eyes full of fear and trepidation. He, one man, one sword, stood proudly in the sky above the Heaven Dragon Pass, but he was superior to millions of soldiers. Even when the millions of demon race soldiers rushed to the Heaven Dragon Pass, they all stopped, not daring to approach the Heaven Dragon Pass. This was the power of a powerhouse. A long time ago, there was a rumor on the continent that Ji Tianxing was the nemesis of the demon race, and the mortal enemy of the demon emperor. Many demon race soldiers didn't believe it, and scoffed at it, disdaining to listen to it. However, after this tragic battle, millions of demon race soldiers had seen Ji Tianxing's means, and had no choice but to believe it. A quarter of an hour later, the sun rose from the east. The morning sun leaped into the sky, sprinkling millions of rays of light on the world. The Heaven Dragon Pass was bathed in the morning sun, the golden light flashing, majestic and sacred. More than 2 million human race soldiers all retreated to the Heaven Dragon Pass. The Imperial Tutor and several human race commanders also returned to the Heaven Dragon Pass. The demon race army stopped attacking, and stayed in the valley outside the Heaven Dragon Pass for a long time, before receiving the order of the demon race commander, and retreated like the tide. Until the demon race army retreated to the demon race camp, Ji Tianxing slowly turned around, stepped on the sky, and returned to the Heaven Dragon Pass. When he returned to the Golden Light Shield, Long Yun Shao, the Imperial Tutor, and several commanders immediately went to greet him. Everyone crowded around him, and asked him about his injuries with concern. He simply responded with a few words, and quickly left the Heaven Dragon Pass, returning to the human race camp, and closed up to treat his injuries. There was no other way. He had been fighting all night, and didn't rest for a moment, so his injuries had accumulated to an extremely tragic point. Chapter 1405. After Ji Tianxing returned to the human camp, he entered a secret chamber and began to circulate his energy to heal his injuries. Soon, more than 2 million injured human soldiers returned to their respective camps to recuperate and heal. The Imperial Preceptor and the other commanders had also suffered serious injuries. However, they could not go into seclusion to recuperate. They had to make proper arrangements for the injured soldiers and deal with the aftermath. Everyone endured their injuries and busied themselves in the camp, issuing various orders. Long Yunshao and hundreds of thousands of soldiers guarded Tianlong Pass. They did not dare to relax at all. The last person to retreat to Tianlong Pass was, of course, the Emperor. When he set off, the Emperor was solemn and dignified. However, when he retreated to Tianlong Pass, his hair was disheveled and his body was covered in blood. The purple gold coiling dragon crown on his head was gone. Fortunately, he was strong enough and only suffered some minor injuries. After returning to the human camp, he sat in the commander's palace and summoned the commanders to discuss military affairs. In the bright and clean meeting hall, the emperor, who had changed into a clean dragon robe, sat on the main seat. The imperial tutor had also changed his clothes and tidied up his appearance. He was still standing beside the throne with a horsetail whisk. However, his eyes were dim and his face was as pale as paper. The aura of his divine soul was also much weaker. It was obvious that his injuries were serious. 6 commanders stood on both sides of the hall. Apart from Long Yunxiao, the 4 directions divine generals and Yun Zhongqi were all injured and looked terrible. A formless heavy atmosphere enveloped the entire hall, causing everyone's hearts to be heavy and solemn. Everyone was silent. No one spoke. After a long time, the emperor raised his head to look at the crowd and asked in a low voice, "Everyone has counted the number of casualties. Quickly report it." His voice was dry and hoarse. It was filled with fatigue and helplessness. The commanders hesitated for a moment before reporting one by one. "Emperor, in the camp I led, 530,000 were killed, 160,000 were seriously injured, and 50,000 were lightly injured. Emperor, in the East Forest camp, 480,000 were killed, 120,000 were seriously injured, and 80,000 were lightly injured. In the North Frontier camp, 560,000 were killed, 180,000 were seriously injured, and 30,000 were lightly injured." One after another, shocking figures were reported by the various commanders. Behind every number was a tragic scene of a fierce battle, blood flowing into rivers, and corpses piling up into mountains. After a while, the commanders finished their reports. The imperial tutor made a summary and reported to the emperor. Reporting to the emperor, "In this war, our race sent out a total of 6,300,000 soldiers led by 7 commanders. At present, the number of soldiers who successfully returned to Tianlong Pass was only about 2.8 million. 3,500,000 soldiers died outside Tianlong Pass, including 2 commanders, Yi Qinwang and Xiao Qinwang." The imperial tutor's words made everyone fall silent. They lowered their heads in grief. The emperor's expression was also very ugly. His brows were tightly knitted, and his eyes were filled with worry and despair. After a long time, he finally opened his mouth and said in a low and angry voice, 3,500,000 soldiers were all killed in one night. Our race originally only had about 7 million soldiers, which was barely enough to defend Tianlong Pass and confront the demon army for a month. Now the casualties are so heavy. Most of the remaining 2.8 million soldiers are injured. It will be difficult for them to participate in the war in a short time. This Tianlong Pass is bound to fall. Our race's momentum is gone." At the end of his speech, the emperor's tone was extremely sorrowful. He sighed in despair. When the commanders heard this, their hearts were incomparably sour. They secretly clenched their fists. Their fingernails pierced their palms and bled, but they didn't notice. The emperor shook his head gently, revealing a bitter smile. He said in a self-blaming tone, "It's all my fault. I knew that the demon army was strong, but I still took the chance and ordered the attack. If it weren't for my greed, how could such a big mistake be made? 3,500,000 soldiers died on the battlefield. Tianlong Pass is about to fall. The demon army will soon march south and step into the central continent. All this is because of a decision of mine, a decree." Hearing the emperor's remorseful and self-blaming words, the imperial tutor and the commanders were full of worry. They hurriedly tried to persuade him. "Emperor, you can't think like that. It's not your fault." At that time, it was the commanders who suggested it. The 2 princes strongly insisted on taking the initiative to attack. "Emperor, you also carefully considered it and let everyone vote before you gave the order. This was the decision that we all made together. It wasn't your arbitrary decision. Don't blame yourself for it. Emperor, the two princes have already repented. They didn't hesitate to sacrifice their lives to cover the retreat of our race's army to Tianlong Pass. Now our race has suffered heavy casualties. The morale is low. What you need to do is to encourage everyone and set an example. Everyone tried to persuade him. They were worried that the emperor would choose to give up resistance in his pessimistic mood. The emperor raised his hand, motioning everyone to quiet down. He said seriously, "Don't worry. Although I'm sad and remorseful, I will never give up easily. No matter how dangerous the situation is, no matter how difficult our situation is, I will never give up. No matter what, I will persist until the end and protect the people of the human race." The imperial tutor and the commanders were finally relieved. They quickly reported the situation of their respective camp. The emperor listened carefully to the reports of the commanders. After pondering for a while, he gave orders one by one. "Last night we just had a great battle. Our race's soldiers suffered heavy casualties. The morale is definitely low. There will even be a pessimistic and desperate atmosphere, which will affect the morale of the army. Commanders, you must do your best to comfort the wounded and stabilize the morale of the army. The ancient divine formation of Tianlong Pass can still hold for 9 days. We must be extra careful and vigilant against the attack of the demon army." The commanders nodded their heads repeatedly to show that they understood. The emperor thought for a while, then said to the imperial tutor, "It's impossible to defend Tianlong Pass with just these 2 million soldiers. Imperial tutor, immediately draft an imperial edict for me. Send an order to the 9 regions of the south. Conscript the garrison of each region to rush to the central continent to help us in the battle. In addition, offer a high commission of resources to recruit the experts and powerhouses among the people to join us. They will work together with our race's army to protect the central continent." When the commanders heard this, they immediately felt that this was a good idea. But the imperial tutor frowned and said worriedly, "Emperor, the ancient divine formation of the 9th heaven is about to close. Even if you send an order to the 9 regions of the south now, it's too late." The emperor looked at the sky outside the hall with a deep look in his eyes. He said faintly, "By the time the reinforcements from the south arrive, Tianlong Pass will have already fallen. The demon army will have already invaded the central continent. I'm mobilizing the reinforcements from the south for the final battle in a few months." The imperial preceptor and the other commanders immediately fell silent. About 2 hours later, the emperor and the commanders finished their discussion. Chapter 1406. For the next 2 days, the demon race stayed hidden in the camp and did not launch another attack. In this war, the demon race army also suffered a great loss. At least 4 million soldiers died in the battle. However, there were 20 million soldiers in the demon race camp. The death of 4 million left more than 10 million soldiers, so it was not a big deal. What really made the demon race commanders angry and distressed was the death of several demon commanders and more than 10 blood gods. These 20 powerhouses, whose strength had reached the soul-refining realm, could command an army of 1 million soldiers and stand alone. Especially those blood gods of the soul-refining realm, they were terrifying killing machines on the battlefield. They could create heaven-shaking disasters and slaughter an army of 1 million soldiers. There were also several demon commanders, who had been selected in the last 2 years. Not only were they strong, but they also had the ability to command an army and arrange troops. They were highly regarded by the demon emperor. However, these powerhouses died in the war, and all of them were killed by Jitianqing. Demon Commander Dark Knight and the Netherworld Soul Beast were also seriously injured by Jitianqing. Because of this, the demon race army did not attack and also recuperated in the camp. After this war, almost every demon race soldier knew of Jitianqing's name and hated him to the bone. Countless demon race experts secretly swore that when they broke through the Heaven Dragon Pass in the future, they would tear Jitianqing into pieces to vent their hatred. Inside the Heaven Dragon Pass, the human race camp was filled with a gloomy fog. The air was filled with a heavy and sorrowful atmosphere. The 2 million soldiers who survived were silently recuperating. Their morale was very low and they were pessimistic. However, the commanders and generals had been comforting the army, so the camp remained calm and there was no disturbance. All the soldiers knew that the human race's defeat was certain. The Heaven Dragon Pass would soon be breached. Everyone just quietly recuperated, waiting for the next war to come. Most of them were mentally prepared. After 9 days, when the ancient divine array closed, they would live and die with the Heaven Dragon Pass. In addition, the Emperor's decree had also been passed down. It had already reached the 9 regions of the south. The generals of the garrisons of the various regions were acting according to the order. They were mobilizing their armies and preparing to rush to the central plains. At the same time, they also posted the imperial court's edicts everywhere, promising great benefits and rich resources to recruit young warriors and experts to join and expand their rank. Unknowingly, 7 days had passed. In the 7 days after the war, the Tianlong Mountain Pass was unusually calm, and there were no more battles. The golden light shield that enveloped Tianlong Mountain Pass also became dimmer, and its aura became weaker and weaker. Many soldiers knew that in another 2 days, the power of the ancient divine array would be exhausted and it would close. At that time, the demon army would be able to easily break through the Tianlong Mountain Pass and attack the central continent. The atmosphere in the human camp became even heavier and more pessimistic. Some of the soldiers had even fled out of fear of death. Fortunately, most of the soldiers had the determination to die and stayed behind resolutely. That morning, the sun rose as usual. Ji Tianxing finally ended his secluded cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber in high spirits. After 7 days of recuperation, he had recovered 80% of his injuries, and his strength had also returned to its peak. After leaving the secret chamber, he flew to the sky and looked down at the human camp to observe the situation. Seeing that the situation in the human camp was relatively stable, he was secretly relieved. He then flew to the commander's palace in the depths of the camp to discuss important matters with the emperor. When he arrived at the commander's palace, there were already several experts present in the conference hall. The emperor and the generals of the 4 sides were discussing the battle plan in 2 days. When the crowd saw Ji Tianxing enter the main hall, they temporarily stopped their discussion and greeted him. After exchanging a few words, Ji Tianxing bowed to the emperor and asked, "Emperor, the power of the ancient divine array has weakened, and it will close in 2 days at most. Our army only has 2 million soldiers left, and their morale is low. What's your plan?" The generals of the 4 sides were silent, looking at the emperor with shining eyes. They were also very concerned about this question and wanted to know the answer. The emperor said with a solemn expression, "This emperor will not hide it from everyone. In our current situation, the fall of the Heaven Dragon Pass is a foregone conclusion. However, the Heaven Dragon Pass is only a barrier between the northern frontier and the central continent, not the final battlefield. This emperor has already mobilized the forces of the 9 regions of the south, and sent a message to the Golden Dragon Emperor and the Demon Emperor, asking them to come and help the central continent. In a month or 2, the demon army will certainly march south and kill their way to the central continent. At that time, it will be the final battle that will decide the fate of our race." Hearing this, the generals understood the emperor's meaning. Although the Heaven Dragon Pass was important, it could only be given up when it was impossible. In any case, the emperor and the human race would not give up resisting. Ji Tianxing understood the emperor's meaning and nodded. He was about to ask again when a muffled sound suddenly came from the sky outside the conference hall. Boom, boom, boom. The sound was like muffled thunder rolling in the sky, but also like the sound of the sky collapsing. However, the sound was not loud, as if it came from a very distant place, faint and intermittent. Everyone in the conference hall was stunned for a moment and quickly turned their heads to look at the sky outside the conference hall. They saw that in the infinitely high sky, there were thousands of colorful lights, like rainbows, and also like giant swords that could split heaven and earth, lying across the sky. All kinds of fiery red, dazzling purple, dark gold, and ice blue brilliance illuminated the sky brilliantly. Even the light of the morning sun could not compete with the thousands of lights. Under everyone's gaze, the colorful lights, which were at least thousands of miles long, violently collided and collapsed into fragments all over the sky, and then slowly dissipated. After a long time, a series of muffled sounds could be heard intermittently. The generals subconsciously thought that it was some kind of heaven and earth anomaly, and all showed a shocked expression. However, Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, and suddenly thought of something, and suddenly his face changed dramatically. That's the direction of the East Sun Valley. Such an earth-shattering scene, which illuminates tens of thousands of miles, must be a battle between primordial soul supremes. The Emperor had already reacted, and nodded with a serious expression. That's right. That is the battle between the Palace Lord and the Demon King. They have both used all their strength and their trump cards. If I remember correctly, that is the Demon King's 6 paths of reincarnation and the Palace Lord's heaven-hooking moon technique. I didn't expect that both of them are stronger than before. The commotion caused by their battle can be transmitted hundreds of thousands of miles away. The Emperor's tone was also full of shock and disbelief. The generals' faces changed, and they all showed anxious and worried expressions. Oh no, the Demon King and the Palace Lord are fighting. The Demon King is leading millions of troops to attack Dongyang Valley. He streaked across the sky like a stream of light and vanished into the horizon in a blink of an eye. The distance between the Heaven Dragon Pass and the Dongyang Valley was 100,000 miles. With his flying speed, he could arrive there in at most 8 hours. As he flew, his eyes were fixed on the sky in front of him. All kinds of dazzling lights and shadows appeared in the sky, and there were sounds of collisions and explosions. He knew very well that the Prefecture Lord and the Devil Emperor were still fighting fiercely, using all kinds of primordial spirit supreme skills to fight. He secretly prayed in his heart, hoping that the Manor Lord could defeat the Devil Emperor and force him to retreat as soon as possible. Even if the chief could not defeat the Devil Emperor, he could not lose to the Devil Emperor. At the very least, they had to fight to a draw. Otherwise, no one could defeat the Devil Emperor, and the human race would be completely finished. As time passed, Ji Tianqing got closer and closer to the Dongyang Valley, and he became more and more anxious. After about 2 hours, the lights and shadows that appeared in the sky in front of him became fewer and fewer. After 4 hours there was no light at all. Even the muffled sounds could not be heard. Has the battle between the Devil Emperor and the Prefecture Lord ended? Who won between the two of them? Ji Tianqing immediately frowned. His eyes were filled with doubt and worry. He believed in the strength of the Prefecture Lord. As the strongest person in the continent, he could definitely defeat the Devil Emperor. But for some reason, he felt a little uneasy. He had a bad premonition. No way. The Prefecture Lord can freely travel between the mysterious Heaven Continent and the Divine Martial Continent. He is very resourceful, and he is Kenshin's most valued in-name disciple. He will definitely not lose to the Devil Emperor. He muttered these words to himself, trying his best to dispel the thought in his heart. Finally, 8 hours passed. He traversed tens of thousands of miles of mountains at his fastest speed and finally arrived at the Dongyang Valley. He could see the Dongyang Valley between the mountains from a few hundred miles away. It was a deep and narrow valley, more than 200 miles long, sandwiched between 2,000-meter-tall peaks. The surrounding mountains were extremely steep and precipitous. No matter how one looked at it, the Dongyang Valley was a dangerous place. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. 500,000 human soldiers would be able to block the attack of millions of Devil Race soldiers if they were to guard the canyon. It was currently evening, and the sun was about to set below the horizon. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on the mountains, enveloping the entire Dongyang Valley. Ji Tianqing could clearly see that the sky several hundred miles around the Dongyang Valley was shrouded in a dark red mist. It was not the afterglow of the setting sun, nor was it the mist between the mountains. It was a bloody mist formed by the condensation of blood energy and demonic energy. The bloody mist was spreading in all directions, gradually thinning and fading. Even so, the world was still filled with the thick smell of blood. Even the howling north wind could not blow it away. The mountains and rivers that were shrouded by the blood fog were in tatters everywhere. Numerous peaks that were thousands of meters high were blasted apart, turning into rubble that was strewn with earth and rocks. Deep pits with a radius of dozens of miles were scattered on the ground. Wide and deep ravines crisscrossed like spider webs. The area within 1,000 miles had been affected by the battle. It was a scene of devastation. As for the ancient Dongyang Valley, it was even more devastated. It had been reduced to a few piles of ruins. One could vaguely see many messy corpses and bones scattered in the ruins and buried under the yellow soil. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's pupils shrank, and his expression immediately changed. "Oh no! Tianlong Pass has fallen. I'm too late." His heart instantly tightened, and he hurriedly flew toward the Dongyang Valley. 10 breaths later, he arrived above the Dongyang Valley and looked down at the valley. The broken valley was full of cracks and pits, and there were gravel and scorched earth everywhere. The soil on the ground had long been dyed red with blood. Many deep pits still had blood that hadn't dried up. Countless human corpses were scattered in the ruins like wood chip. Most of the corpses were devoid of flesh and blood, leaving only incomplete white bones. It looked like they had died a miserable death. More than 30 young Heaven Origin stage experts were shuttling back and forth in the ruins, cleaning the battlefield and searching for the soldiers who were still alive. About 20,000 armored soldiers were curled up in a corner of the ruins, silently treating their wounds. Chapter 1408. Ji Tianqing was no stranger to the young experts who were flying in the sky, cleaning up the battlefield and searching for the injured. At a glance, he saw many familiar faces. There were Fox Princess and Kuan Wu of the Demon Clan, Prince Tai Yi of the Water Clan, Ling Yishui, and many other princes of the Human Clan. There was no doubt that the 30 young experts were the princes of the Monarch Mansion. Ji Tianqing clearly remembered that Long Yunxiao had told him that more than 40 princes of the Monarch Mansion had participated in the battle. Now there were only 30 princes left, and all of them were covered in blood and injuries. It was obvious that more than a dozen princes had died in the battle. The 20,000 soldiers hiding in the corner of the ruins were the Human Clan soldiers who were guarding Dongyang Valley. There were originally 500,000 soldiers, but now there were only 20,000 left. Many of them were seriously injured and on the verge of death. From this, it could be seen how tragic the battle was. Seeing this shocking scene, Ji Tianqing hurriedly opened the Sword World and summoned ancestor Sanju, the Jinshan King, Qianyu, and the Little Black Dragon. "Ah San, hurry up and help those soldiers and princes heal their injuries." "Qianyu, the Little Black Dragon, the Jinshan King, go and help the princes search for survivors." Ancestor Sanju, the Jinshan King, and the others hurriedly obeyed and went to heal the wounded. Ji Tianqing flew over the ruins and looked 100 miles away with a serious expression. He was very familiar with the black-robed experts. They were the god masters of the Monarch Mansion. He was worried about the Mansion Master's safety, so he did not have time to greet Tai Yi, Kuan Wu, and the others. He hurriedly flew toward the god masters. It was only when he flew closer that he could see the situation clearly. There were 4 god masters in black robes at the bottom of a deep pit that was 100 miles wide. They surrounded a purple-robed figure and anxiously performed a secret technique. The purple-robed figure was a burly man with a head of white hair. He lay unconscious at the bottom of the deep pit. His robes were tattered and covered in blood and mud. The jade crown that bound his white hair was already broken. His white hair was dyed red with blood and buried in the mud. Half of his body was covered in yellow soil. There was a bloody wound on his forehead that was so deep that his bones could be seen. There was also a bloody hole the size of a bowl in his chest that was still bleeding. When Ji Tianqing saw the person's face clearly, his body immediately shook violently, as if he had been struck by lightning. Mansion Master? At that moment, Ji Tianqing's heart tightened. He was so shocked that he forgot to breathe. He simply could not believe his eyes. The continent's #1 expert, the all-powerful Manor Lord, was actually lying in a pool of blood, riddled with wounds, unconscious. All this time, he had been unable to see through the Mansion Master's strength, nor could he understand the Mansion Master's powerful techniques and technique. As far as he knew, the Manor Lord was the most powerful person on the continent, far surpassing the other primordial soul supremes. Even if the Devil Emperor had recovered his strength, he would still be no match for the Mansion Master. As long as the Palace Master was there, Central State would be safe. Because of this, he had always harbored hope in his heart, believing that the humans would emerge victorious. The Devil Emperor would be killed sooner or later, and the demonic army would be defeated. He had even fantasized that once the demonic chaos was resolved and the situation in the profound Sky continent stabilized, he would head to Shenwu continent. But he had never imagined that the Mansion Master would be injured to such an extent after fighting with the Devil Emperor. At that moment, the pillar of support in his heart suddenly collapsed. All of his confidence and hope had vanished like a bubble. How could the Mansion Master lose to the Devil Emperor? And to the point where he's unconscious? This is impossible. In just 2 short years, the Devil Emperor's strength has already recovered to such an extent? If even the Mansion Master is no match for the Devil Emperor, who else on the continent can deal with him? Ji Tianqing was somewhat dazed as he stared at the Mansion Master in the deep pit and muttered to himself. At that moment, the 4 Divine Masters sensed his aura and turned their heads to look at him. The leader of the group, Divine Master Blackfeather, raised an eyebrow and expressionlessly asked, "Tianqing? It's you? Why are you here?" Another Divine Master revealed a relieved expression and hurriedly shouted, "Ji Tianqing, you've come at the right time. Quickly come and help." Ji Tianqing sized them up and saw that they were all heavily injured and covered in blood. One of the God-tier masters had one of his legs cut off, while the other had one of his arms cut off. Even Divine Master Blackfeather, who was the strongest among them, had several bone-deep wounds all over his body. His left eye had become an empty bloody hole, and there were still traces of blood on his face. Ji Tianqing clearly remembered that 5 Divine Masters had followed the Mansion Master to Dongyang Valley. Now there were only 4 Divine Masters left, and the 5th Divine Master had most likely died in battle. Even though they were heavily injured, they did not bother to treat their injuries. They were all anxiously guarding the Mansion Master. 3 of them were working together to cast a spell, sending dark greenwood origin energy into the Mansion Master's body. Ji Tianqing hurriedly flew to the bottom of the deep pit and landed beside the Mansion Master. He asked Divine Master Blackfeather, "Great Divine Master, what happened? How did the Mansion Master get injured like this?" Divine Master Blackfeather's single eye flashed with a fierce cold light. He said in a low voice, 8 hours ago, the Demon King led a dozen demon race experts to attack Dongyang Valley. The Demon King had a heaven-defying divine weapon and quickly broke the Mansion Master's formations. He led the army into Dongyang Valley. I and the other Divine Masters led all the princes to fight against the demon race experts and helped the defending army to resist the attack of the demon race army. The Mansion Master fought against the Demon King and the 2 Venerables alone for more than 2 hours. In the end, the Mansion Master killed one of the Venerables, but both he and the Demon King were heavily injured. They fell from the sky and fell into a coma. The Demon King also ordered a retreat with the Demon Race army. I don't know the details. You'll have to ask the Mansion Master when he wakes up. Divine Master Blackfeather briefly explained what had happened so that Ji Tianxing could roughly understand the situation. He nodded and said, "The Demon King has a heaven-defying divine weapon? No wonder he could severely injure the Mansion Master. Forget it, let's not talk about this for now. It's a good thing that the Demon King and the Demon Race army have retreated. Let's treat the Mansion Master first." As he spoke, he looked at the Mansion Master seriously. He waved his hand and released his divine soul power to check on the Mansion Master's injuries. He saw that the Mansion Master's flesh and skin had turned dark purple and was constantly emitting purple demon chi. There were at least 30 wounds all over his body. They looked ferocious and terrifying, but none of them were fatal. The real fatal wound was the bull-sized bloody hole in his chest. Through the black and purple bloody hole, one could clearly see that the Mansion Master's chest was empty where his heart was. Obviously, the Mansion Master's heart had been taken away. Chapter 1409. The 4 God-tier masters only knew that the Prefecture Master was severely injured by the demonic Emperor and had his heart dug out. His body was severely injured and would need to recuperate for at least 100 years to recover. Fortunately, the Prefecture Master's primordial spirit still existed. He was only severely injured and would not lose his life. Although the 4 God-tier masters were depressed, they did not understand what this meant. Only Ji Tianxing was the most depressed and furious. His eyes flashed with murderous intent. Only he knew that the heart in the Prefecture Master's body was not an ordinary martial artist's heart, but a god's heart. It was a divine item that Kenshin gave to the Prefecture Master and was the reason why the Prefecture Master became the most powerful person in the continent. More importantly, the god's heart was the core of the god's body. After the demonic emperor took the god's heart, he could create a complete god's body for the ancestor demonic god. Soon, the ancestor demonic god's body would be completed and the Grim Reaper would be reborn and descend upon this continent again. The calamity of the Tianxian continent was coming. Thinking of the consequences, Ji Tianxing's heart trembled. He clenched his fists so tightly that they cracked and gritted his teeth. God-tier Master Blackfeather saw his strange expression and asked with concern, "Tianxing, what's wrong?" Ji Tianxing regained his senses and quickly shook his head. "Nothing, I'm just angry that the Prefecture Master's injuries are so severe. I can't wait to tear the demonic emperor into pieces." God-tier Master Blackfeather was silent for a while before he said in a low voice, "I can understand your feelings, but let's treat the Prefecture Master's injuries first." Although he did not say it, everyone knew that even the Prefecture Master was severely injured by the demonic emperor. It would be harder for them to tear the demonic emperor into pieces. At this point, Ji Tianxing's anger was useless. He could only suppress his anger and murderous intent and use the ultimate skill of the Wood Emperor Umbrella to treat the Prefecture Master's injuries. After 6 hours, the wounds on the Prefecture Master's body gradually healed. However, there was still a mysterious and powerful demonic chi in his skin and flesh that was still corroding his meridians and flesh. Ji Tianxing knew that the Mansion Master had long cultivated the heaven and earth Dharma body and possessed an almost immortal body. However, the mysterious purplish-black demonic chi was actually able to erode the Manor Lord's cosmic body. It was clear how powerful it was. Ji Tianxing guessed that it might not be the demonic chi of the demonic emperor, but rather it came from that heaven-defying divine artifact. He then activated the power of the heaven-mending orb and released a sacred white light into the Mansion Master's body. This method was indeed effective. When the mysterious demonic chi came into contact with the holy white light, it was like snow meeting the scorching sun, quickly disintegrating. Ji Tianxing circulated his chi for 8 hours before he finally cleared the devil chi from the Manor Lord's body. Then, He began to channel his qi into the headmaster in an attempt to wake him up. This process was slow and exhausting, consuming an enormous amount of magic power. Ji Tianqing was so tired that he was sweating profusely. His face was pale, and his spirit was getting weaker and weaker. About 10 hours later, the Manor Lord's condition stabilized and he finally regained consciousness. Ji Tianqing hurriedly stopped channeling his qi. He took out a few pills and swallowed them, quickly circulating his qi to refine the pills. When the 4 God-tier masters saw the Manor Lord slowly opening his eyes, they all looked as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. "Mansion Master, you're finally awake." "Great, the Mansion Master's condition has stabilized." "Mansion Master, the demonic emperor and the demonic army have retreated." The Mansion Master lay weakly in the pit. He glanced at the 4 God-tier masters with dim eyes and finally, his gaze landed on Ji Tianqing. When he saw Ji Tianqing by his side, his eyes lit up, and his spirit was lifted a little. His lips trembled slightly, opened and closed a few times, and said in a weak voice, "Tianqing, come here. I have something to say to you." Hearing this, the 4 God-tier masters turned to look at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing also stopped circulating his qi. He quickly nodded at the Mansion Master and said, "Mansion Master, please speak." The Mansion Master was silent for a moment. He looked at God-tier Master Blackfeather sternly and said, "All of you, go and treat your injuries." When God-tier Master Blackfeather and the rest heard this, they understood what he meant. He wanted to talk to Ji Tianqing alone. Thus, the 4 God-tier masters said their goodbyes and left one after another. At the bottom of the pit, only Ji Tianqing and the Mansion Master were left. The Mansion Master then looked at Ji Tianqing and said in a serious and solemn tone, "Tianqing, the demonic emperor's strength has recovered too quickly. It's beyond our imagination. He has already recovered to the 5th level of the primordial spirit realm, which is only 3 levels lower than me. However, he has a divine weapon, a real divine weapon, the Great Een Soul Severing Ruler. The Great Een Soul Severing Ruler is an evil divine weapon forged by the gods. It's so powerful that it can destroy heaven and earth. It's impossible for it to appear in the Tianxian continent. The demonic emperor relied on the Great Een Soul Severing Ruler to defeat me and injure me to this extent. He even stole my deity heart." When he heard this, Ji Tianqing's expression became even more gloomy. He muttered coldly, "The Great Een Soul Severing Ruler? An evil divine weapon forged by the gods? No wonder the demonic emperor was able to defeat you and steal your deity heart. Damn it! How did the demonic emperor obtain a divine weapon that's impossible to appear in the Tianxian continent?" A trace of hatred flashed through the Mansion Master's eyes, and he warned in a low voice, "Tianqing, I'm not too sure about the origin of that divine weapon. However, I'm certain that it came from the Xinwu continent, and it was created by a deity powerhouse." Ji Tianqing immediately came to a realization and understood what Lu Yin was trying to say. He probed, "Master, are you saying that the Demon King might be in cahoots with one of the Xinwu continent's deities?" The Mansion Master nodded with difficulty and warned in a hoarse voice, "If you can go to the Xinwu continent in the future, you must be careful and cautious." Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment before he smiled bitterly. The demonic emperor is so powerful, and he has a true divine weapon. Who can stop him? Disaster is coming, and the demonic emperor will definitely not let me go. How will I have the chance to go to the Xinwu continent? At this point, the Mansion Master spoke again. The demonic emperor led an army to attack Dongyang Valley, and it was all part of his scheme. He did not know that I had already returned to the Tianxian continent. He thought that you and the emperor would come to intercept him, so he took the opportunity to kill you and the emperor. However, he did not expect that I would personally guard Dongyang Valley, kill a venerable, and destroy an army of over 3 million demons. It's a pity that my deity heart was stolen. After he escaped with his injuries, he will definitely forge a divine body for the primogenitor demon god. I hate him. At the end of his speech, the mansion master used almost all of his strength to let out a roar of grief and indignation. Ji Tianqing was about to persuade him, but he saw the mansion master slowly close his eyes and fall into a coma once again. After all, the mansion master's primordial spirit had been severely injured by the extreme soul-severing ruler. However, Ji Tianqing and the other divine masters had not reached the primordial spirit realm, so they were unable to heal the mansion master's primordial spirit. Chapter 1410. Dongyang Valley had been destroyed and had lost its function as a checkpoint. There was no need to defend it anymore. The 4 divine masters were treating their injuries, and more than 30 princes had also finished their search and rescue work. The remaining 20,000 soldiers were recuperating in a corner of the ruins. Ji Tianqing turned and left the deep pit. He came to Divine Master He Yu and said with a serious expression, "Great Divine Master, Dongyang Valley has become like this. There's no need to defend it anymore. The palace master is seriously injured and unconscious. I'll try to heal him. You don't have to worry. The ancient divine formation at Tianlong Mountain Pass is about to close. The demon army will soon invade Tianlong Mountain Pass. I must go back as soon as possible. You should lead everyone to leave this place as soon as possible. Either go to Tianlong Mountain Pass to help, or go back to the Central Plains to rest." After saying a few words, he bowed to the divine masters and was about to leave. Kuan Wu, Fox Princess, Tai Yi and the others saw him and came to greet him. They exchanged some pleasantries and asked about each other's recent situation. After chatting for a while, they parted ways. Ji Tianqing flew up into the sky and rode the divine spirit sword back to Tianlong Mountain Pass. Although he had consumed a lot of magic power and was very tired, he was worried about the palace master. The situation at Tianlong Mountain Pass and the palace master's injuries forced him to support his weak body and rush back as fast as he could. The return journey was very smooth. He didn't encounter any danger or obstacles. 8 hours later, Ji Tianqing returned to Tianlong Mountain Pass. It was already late at night. The night was dark. There were no stars or moon in the sky. The biting cold north wind whistled, carrying the cold air of the northern frontier. It crossed the northern mountain range and blew toward the central plains. The camp of the human race was dark. Only a few lights were lit. The camp was very quiet. Only a few soldiers and guards were patrolling. It was very cold and desolate. It was like the omen of defeat and death. It was depressing. As soon as Ji Tianqing returned to the camp, an imperial guard came to deliver a message, saying that the emperor had secretly summoned him. He had a feeling that the emperor had a secret mission for him, so he quietly rushed to the commander's palace. In the commander's palace's meeting hall, the lights were dim and quiet. After he entered the main hall, he realized that the main hall was empty. Only the emperor was sitting alone in the main seat. At this moment, the emperor was no longer as dignified as before. He leaned against the throne with a tired expression, one hand supporting his forehead. His brows were tightly furrowed, appearing to be deeply worried. Ji Tianqing walked to the front of the throne and bowed silently. After that, he stood respectfully without saying a word. The imperial monarch was silent for a moment before he slowly sat up straight, and he recovered his usual dignified bearing. He looked up at Ji Tianqing with a deep gaze and asked calmly, "Has Dongyang Valley fallen?" Ji Tianqing nodded. After a moment of silence, the emperor asked again, "How are the manor head and the soldiers?" Ji Tianqing answered honestly, "The demon emperor has a heaven-defying divine weapon called the extreme soul-severing ruler. He has severely injured the prefecture master and is now in a coma. Dongyang Valley was destroyed, and only 20,000 of the original 500,000 soldiers were left. The divine masters and princes also suffered heavy casualties." The emperor seemed to be mentally prepared and was not too surprised. He just frowned and fell into silence again. After a long time, he spoke again in a bleak tone, "Even the manor head can't do anything to the demon emperor. Who else on this continent can stop him?" Ji Tianqing was silent, not knowing how to answer. In fact, he felt the same as the emperor. There was a mountain pressing down on his heart, and he almost couldn't breathe. After a while, the emperor said in a low voice with a solemn expression, "Tianqing, there is not much time left. When the demon army attacks, the battlefield will shift to the central plains. You don't have to stay here. It's useless. Go back to the central plains tonight and make preparations." Ji Tianqing understood that the emperor was arranging the follow-up matters. He was going to give up Tian Long Pass. He guessed that the emperor had made such plans and preparations a long time ago. In the central plains, the emperor must have made arrangements long ago. After all, it was unrealistic to think that the Tian Long Pass alone could stop the demon army. Ji Tianqing nodded and acknowledged the order. Then, he asked, "Emperor, what about you, the other commanders, and the 2 million-strong army?" The emperor waved his hand and said calmly, "This emperor has made arrangements. You don't need to worry. Go back to the central plains and make preparations. The real decisive battle has yet to come." Ji Tianqing didn't say anything more. He cupped his hands and said yes, then took his leave. After walking out of the commander palace, he looked up at the dark night sky and the central plains in the south. He sighed in his heart, even if the human army retreats to the central plains, so what? Who can resist the demon emperor and the ancestor demon god who is about to awaken? Who can resist the demon army of 20 million? The demon emperor has been lying dormant for 1,000 years, carefully planning this chaos of the demon race. He also has the power of the ancestor demon god's rebirth. Can the human race survive this calamity? The answer was unknown, or even negative. His mood was heavy and oppressive. He was somewhat pessimistic and desperate. But he couldn't give up resisting. He could only do his best and leave the rest to fate, hoping for a miracle. 4 days later, Ji Tianqing crossed millions of li of mountains and rivers and returned to the Central Plains city. When he left the Central Plains and hurried to the Heaven Dragon Pass, the Central Plains city was already in a state of desolation and panic. But now, when he stood in the sky above the Central Plains city, facing the setting sun and overlooking the city, he felt more and more desolate. He saw that the vast Central Plains city was no longer as bustling and prosperous as it was in the past. Not a single person could be seen in the streets and alleys. Countless shops and markets were closed. A thick layer of dust and fallen leaves covered the doors, but no one came to clean them. Most of the buildings in the city were empty. There were no traces of human activity. There were no more commoners lining up to leave the city. There were almost no human figures. After all, most of the commoners had already fled the Central Plains city, dragging their families to the south. On the city gates and walls, there were still many city guards standing guard. Although they were wearing armor and carrying swords, their attire neat and dignified, their spirits were somewhat dispirited and their morale was very low. If it weren't for the military order, those city guards would have fled the Central Plains long ago. Ji Tianqing strolled around the city. After checking the situation of the Central Plains city, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. The once flourishing and prosperous Holy Land of martial arts had become such a desolate and empty city. A moment later, he supported his exhausted body and returned to the Monarch Mansion. The Monarch Mansion was also empty. There were only 2 divine sages and hundreds of guards standing guard. Ji Tianqing didn't return to the Tianqing Palace. He went directly to the Imperial Palace. He entered the Imperial Palace's secret room. He was about to put the Palace Master in the secret room to treat his injuries. The Palace Master had already woken up. He used a secret sound transmission to say to him, "Tianqing, there's no need to treat my injuries first. We have some things to say to you." Chapter 14:11. Hearing the word "we," Ji Tianxing vaguely understood. What the palace master was about to say must have been discussed by Gu Yi, Xiao Shui, and the other three. It was everyone's common wish. Thus, he opened the world in the sword, and let the four return to the secret chamber so that they could talk face to face. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a flash of light, the palace master, Emperor Yi, Xiao Wentian, and Shui Ruoyu appeared in the secret chamber. The four of them sat side by side on the ice jade bed in the corner of the secret chamber. They looked very weak and their eyes were dim. Their injuries were still serious. Ji Tianxing looked at the four of them calmly and asked, "Senior brothers and sisters, if you have anything to say, just say it." The palace master, Emperor Yi, and the others all looked at him with a solemn and serious expression. As the leader of the four, the palace master took the lead and said, "Tianxing, you also understand the current situation. The demon emperor's strength has increased greatly, and he has the Tian soul-splitting ruler, a divine weapon. In the entire continent, there is almost no one who can match him. The demon emperor took my deity heart and will definitely form a complete body for the ancestor demon god, so that the ancestor demon god can be reborn as soon as possible. Other than the demon emperor and the ancestor demon god, who is about to be born, the demon race still has an army of more than 20 million. They will soon march south and kill their way into the central plains. Tianxing, what do you think of the current situation? What plan can you think of to resolve the chaos of the demon race and save the continent?" The palace master's expression and tone were very solemn. Emperor Yi, Xiao Wentian, and Shui Ruoyu also looked at Ji Tianxing with solemn gazes. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned. After thinking carefully for a while, he revealed a helpless and bitter smile and shook his head. "The current situation is almost unsolvable. With the experts and military strength of our race, it is impossible to fight against the demon race. Soon, the demon race will take over the central plains and unify the entire profound sky continent. The plans I can think of are all unrealistic and almost delusional. There is no need to mention them. Unless a miracle happens, the central plains will fall and darkness will cover the entire continent." The palace master nodded with a solemn expression and said in a low voice, "Yes, that is the truth." His tone was filled with pain and helplessness. Her snow-white hair was messy, her face was pale, and her eyes were dim and lifeless. Everything seemed desolate and helpless. However, after a moment of silence, the Institute Lord slowly lifted his head and stared at Ji Tianxing. His eyes gradually regained their luster and shone brightly. His eyes were filled with hope and expectation as he said, "The current situation is an abyss of despair for everyone. Even I am unable to destroy this abyss and cut through the darkness that is about to come. However, you can do it. Just as you said, unless a miracle happens, the central plains will fall. And you are the miracle that is about to happen. Only you can create miracles, resolve the chaos of the demon clan, save the central plains from the crisis, and save the people of the world." The master's voice was very solemn, and there was an unquestionable sense of holiness to it. Not only did Emperor Yi, Xiao Wentian, and Shui Ruoyu nod in agreement, even Ji Tianxing was infected by his expression and tone and almost believed him. However, he still frowned and said in a complicated tone, "Thank you for your praise, Institute Lord, but even if I have the determination and confidence, I don't have the strength to do so. I haven't even reached the primordial soul realm, and I can't even defeat the demon emperor's mount, let alone the demon emperor and the ancestral demon god. Even if I give it my all, I won't be able to turn the tide and resolve the chaos of the demon clan." These words were from the bottom of his heart, and they were also Ji Tianxing's true thoughts. However, the Institute Lord, Emperor Yi, and the others shook their heads when they heard his words. Emperor Yi said in a serious tone, "Tianxing, don't belittle yourself. Not only does eldest senior brother have high hopes for you, but we also believe that you will definitely be able to destroy the demon clan's plan and kill the demon emperor. In the past 10,000 years, there has never been a monstrous genius like you in the Tianxian continent. From the day you were born, you were destined to be the Demon Emperor's nemesis, and only you can kill the Demon Emperor. Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with a bitter smile, Emperor Yi, even Kenshin back then couldn't completely kill the Demon Emperor and could only seal and suppress him. What right do I have to be mentioned in the same breath as the Sword God? I can't even suppress the Demon Emperor, let alone kill him. When he finished speaking, Shui Ruoyu waved her hand and explained, Tianxing, the four of us know you very well, and we have discussed you many times. We have high hopes for you, and we have placed all our hopes on you, but we are not blind. Master couldn't kill the Demon Emperor back then, and could only seal and suppress him because the Demon Emperor was the reincarnation of an ancient demon seed. The ancient demon seed was born from the filth and demon chi of the world, and after 10,000 years, it was born under extremely special conditions, and it was originally undying and indestructible. Only an extremely small number of powers could completely kill and purify it. It's a pity that Master didn't master those powers back then. And now you have mastered 2 of them. Ji Tianxing was stunned, and he asked doubtfully, Senior Sister, are you talking about the 9th Heaven Divine Thunder? But when I was dealing with the 2 primordial soul realm blood gods, the 9th Heaven Divine Thunder was completely ineffective, and I couldn't kill them. Shui Ruoyu squeezed out a smile and shook her head gently. You are only in the spirit cultivation realm. No matter how powerful the 9th Heaven Divine Thunder is, it can't help you kill the primordial soul realm blood gods. However, when you reach the primordial soul realm, the 9th Heaven Divine Thunder that you can control will have a qualitative leap, and its power will be even stronger. By then, you will have a chance to kill the primordial soul realm blood gods. I see. Ji Tianxing was enlightened, and he nodded to show that he understood. Shui Ruoyu added, not only the 9th Heaven Divine Thunder, but also the 9th Heaven Divine Weapon from the upper world, which contains the most sacred and mighty divine power, can also kill the Demon Emperor. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows, and immediately thought of the heaven-mending pearl in his mind. That's right. The mysterious heaven-mending pearl in my mind is said to be a divine item that the ancient gods borrowed from one of the gods in the 9th heaven to mend the heavens. Even if the 9th Heaven Divine Thunder can't kill the Demon Emperor, the heaven-mending pearl should be able to restrain the Demon Emperor, right? At this moment, the Mansion Master said with a solemn expression, Tianxing, now you should understand why we have such high hopes for you, right? Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood, and said somewhat helplessly, but I am now stuck at the 9th level of the spirit cultivation realm, and I have fallen into shackles. According to my estimation, it will take at least 2 to 3 years, and at most a few decades before I can break through to the primordial soul realm. By then, the demon clan will have already unified the Tianxian continent. The Mansion Master, Emperor Yi, and the other 3 had long expected him to say this, and immediately revealed meaningful smiles. Chapter 14:12. Breaking through to the Essence Soul Realm in a month? How is that possible? Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and looked at the Mansion Master and the other 3 in disbelief. With his talent, it was already an unprecedented feat for him to break through to the Essence Soul Realm in 2 to 3 years. Which of the few Essence Soul Supremes on the mainland had not been shackled for hundreds of years before breaking through to the Essence Soul Realm? Within a month. This was too much of a dream. However, after Ji Tianxing's shock and confusion, he saw the meaningful smiles on the 4's faces and immediately guessed something. His heart skipped a beat, and his expression changed immediately. He frowned and asked, Senior brothers, senior sisters, don't tell me you want to impart your skills to me? The Mansion Master, Emperor Yi, and the others nodded and said in unison, That's right. We want to impart our lifetime's worth of skills to you and help you break through to the Essence Soul Realm. Ji Tianxing thought to himself that this was indeed the case and hurriedly waved his hand to refuse. No, absolutely not. All of you are in-name disciples of the Kenshin and have cultivated for thousands of years to reach your current level of strength. How can you impart your skills to me? Moreover, all of you are seriously injured. If you lose your lifetime's worth of skills, your lives will be in danger. In short, I don't agree with what you're doing, and I won't accept your skills. The mansion master, Emperor Yi, and the others seemed to have expected Ji Tianxing's reaction and were not surprised. The four of them looked at each other and tried to persuade him. Tianxing, the four of us have been robbed of our divine items and are seriously injured. We won't be able to recover our strength within 100 years and are practically crippled. However, the demon clan is coming menacingly and Zhongzhou is in danger. This is the only way we can do our part in resisting the demon clan. Tianxing, there is a gap between the spirit cultivation realm and the essence soul realm. Once you cross that gap, you will reach a whole new realm and level, and there will be earth-shattering changes. With your talent and strength, once you break through to the essence soul realm, you will definitely surpass the current few essence soul supremes on the mainland. As disciples of the Kenshin, we can't stand up for the human race when it is in danger and turn the tide. We can only place our hopes on you. No matter what, you have to accept our cultivation and help us complete our wishes. Only in this way would you be worthy of Master's teachings and guidance. In the end, the manor head spoke up and said earnestly, Tianxing, regardless of whether we pass on our techniques or not, we will have to go into seclusion and recuperate for over 100 years before we can recover our strength, and we will not be able to resist the demons. Therefore, we will use the wisdom imbuement technique that our master imparted to you to help you break through to the primordial spirit realm. After the training is over, the four of us will have to sleep in this imperial palace for 100 years and spend a long time recuperating. You will have to walk your own path in the future. After listening to the four of them, Ji Tianxing was a little hesitant and conflicted. He hesitated for a moment before asking the manor head, Manor head, are you sure there won't be any danger if you pass your skills to me? If you pass your cultivation to me, you will suffer a backlash and your life will be in danger. I will definitely not accept it. The mansion master, Emperor Yi, and the others hurriedly shook their heads and said in unison, Don't worry, we'll be fine. Everyone's tone was very certain, and their eyes were full of hope as they looked at him. Tianxing, don't hesitate any longer. Let's get started quickly. That's right, Tianxing. The demon army will soon cross the Heaven Dragon Pass and head south to Zhongzhou. We don't have much time left. Tianxing, we were harmed by the demon emperor to this extent. Don't you want to avenge us? Shui Ruoyu, Xiao Wentian, and the others were all urging him anxiously. Ji Tianxing observed the expressions and gazes of the four of them. After pondering silently for a while, he nodded and agreed. All right, I promise you. If I can break through to the primordial spirit realm, I will definitely use all that I have learned in my life and kill the demon emperor at all costs to avenge all of you and all the innocent people who died tragically. Seeing that he had finally agreed, the manor head, Emperor Yi, and the others heaved a sigh of relief and revealed a relieved expression. The manor head said in a serious tone, Tianxing, start meditating and cultivating now. Recover to your peak strength first. We still have to make some preparations. Ji Tianxing nodded and sat cross-legged on the frost jade bed. He began to cultivate and quickly recover his magic power. After he entered the state of cultivation, the manor head, Emperor Yi, and the others' expressions returned to normal. Their expressions became very solemn. The four of them quietly gathered in the corner of the secret chamber. The manor head said through telepathy, Junior brothers and junior sisters, I didn't expect that the four of us would end up in such a state. Back then, Master suppressed the ancient demon emperor with a single sword strike, and his name was renowned throughout the world. Now, the demon emperor has taken away our divine item and caused us to be in such a miserable state. It's really a disgrace to Master's name. However, Tianxing is our only hope to wash away our shame and take revenge. Since we have already decided to place our last hope on him, we must impart our skills to him without holding back and let his strength reach its peak." Emperor Yi, Xiao Wentian, and Shui Ruoyu nodded to show that they understood. Their expressions and eyes were somewhat resolute. After a moment of silence, Shui Ruoyu used telepathy and asked in a stammering tone, "Eldest senior brother, is Tianxing really Master's reincarnation?" Emperor Yi and Xiao Wentian clearly had the same question. They looked at the manor head with bright eyes. The manor head glanced at the three of them and said faintly, "Perhaps. Otherwise, how could there be such a similar person in this world? However, I can't be sure about this. I'm afraid that only the burial of heaven knows the truth. However, no matter what, Tianxing is Master's successor. He has already surpassed him. The talent and strength that he has displayed are even more monstrous than Master's back then. He definitely won't let the four of us down." After hearing the manor head's answer, Shui Ruoyu, Emperor Yi, and Xiao Wentian all turned to look at Ji Tianxing before slowly retracting their gazes. Emperor Ye's lips curled into a smile. He said in a playful tone, "I didn't expect that after 1,000 years, this would be the first time that the four of us have worked together, but it would also be the last time." Xiao Wentian revealed a hearty smile and nodded. "However, we have no regret. To be able to see Master's successor rise while we are still alive, we can die without regret." Shui Ruoyu also revealed a gentle smile. She said in a gratified tone, "The achievements and strength that we have today are all due to Master's nurturing and guidance. If not for Master's care, we would have died long ago. How could we have lived for 1,000 years? Everything that we have done today is to repay Master's reincarnation. We have nothing to worry about and we don't owe each other anything." The manor head nodded slightly. His gaze was deep and calm. He said faintly, "That's right. It's only fair that we repay Master's 1,000 years of kindness with our lifetime's cultivation and life. Since that's the case, let's take out all the cultivation resources that we have accumulated throughout our lives." Chapter 14-13. Emperor Yi, Xiao Wentian, and Shui Ruoyu took out their spatial rings and handed them over to the mansion lord. Their spatial rings contained the wealth and resources that they had accumulated over 1,000 years. It was unimaginably rich. Not only were there hundreds of millions of spirit stones, but there were also tens of millions of pills and all kinds of materials for refining pills, forging weapons, and setting up formations. There were also all kinds of powerful soul tools and dharma treasures. Such a terrifying amount of cultivation resources was enough to support hundreds of soul refinement realm cultivators for decades. However, these cultivation resources were all placed into the ancient divine formation by the mansion lord to maintain the operation of the secret chamber's great formation. According to the mansion lord's estimation, such a huge amount of cultivation resources could only support the operation of the divine formation for 2 months. The ancient divine formation in the secret chamber could change the flow of time and had an unimaginable effect. 2 months had passed in the outside world, but Ji Tianxing could cultivate in the secret chamber for 20 months. After the mansion lord placed the cultivation resources into the divine formation, he activated the divine formation and changed the flow of time in the secret chamber. Then, he led Emperor Yi, Xiao Wentian, and Shui Ruoyu to Ji Tianxing's side and sat down cross-legged. The 4 of them sat in the north, south, east, and west of Ji Tianxing. They closed their eyes calmly and began to perform the great enlightenment technique with their palms. They waved their palms in a seemingly slow but fast manner. Their fingertips surged with a dazzling radiance of magic power and condensed into a mysterious seal. An invisible and powerful force spread out from the 4 of them and gradually gathered together to form a 7-colored light barrier that enveloped them and Ji Tianxing. Then, the 4 of them used the great enlightenment technique to release their own power. It turned into a trickle and poured into the top of Ji Tianxing's head. The 4 hair-like streams entered his body and quickly merged into his meridians, circulating throughout his entire body. Thus, his magic power grew rapidly, causing the power of his spiritual energy and his spiritual energy spell sword to become stronger. Ji Tianqing did not feel the slightest bit of discomfort. The 4 people's power and his magic power did not reject each other and merged smoothly. The great enlightenment technique that Kenshin taught him was a very mysterious and profound saint-level technique. It only had one function, and that was to transmit energy. It could help the cultivator to pass on all his power to the target without any reservation. Moreover, it wouldn't cause any harm to the target, nor would it affect the target's future cultivation. On the Tianxian land, it was not rare for martial artists to pass on their power to each other. This was especially true for the various large sects and aristocratic families. If the elders wanted the younger generation to succeed their position or pass on their martial arts, they would pass on their martial arts to increase their strength. However, this method of increasing one's strength through imparting would damage the martial arts foundation of the recipient. It would be very difficult to increase one's strength in the future. After all, it was not advisable to rush things. However, the Great Enlightenment technique was different. It was a saint-level cultivation technique, allowing Ji Tianqing to completely absorb the power of the manor head and the others without affecting his martial arts foundation. This was why it was so miraculous and heaven-defying. As time passed, Ji Tianqing's strength stabilized and grew rapidly, gradually approaching the limits of the soul-refining realm. In the short span of a month, his strength had reached the limit of the soul-refining realm. With the help of the manor head, Emperor Yi, and the others, he began to break through the shackles of the primordial soul realm with all his might. As everyone knew, there was a huge gap between the divine essence realm and the soul-refining realm. That was the boundary between the extraordinary and the ordinary, and it was difficult to cross. There was also a huge gap between the soul-refining realm and the primordial soul realm that was even more difficult to cross. On the Tianxian land, there were over 100 known soul-refining realm powerhouses, but there were only a few primordial soul realm powerhouses. From this, it could be seen how difficult it was for a soul-refining realm powerhouse to break through the shackles of the primordial soul realm. Even if the manor head, Emperor Yi, and the others used the Great Enlightenment technique to help Ji Tianqing, it would still take him a few months to break through to the primordial soul realm. Moreover, in the process of breaking through the shackles of the primordial soul realm, he would have to endure extreme pain and torment. It was a very difficult and arduous process that required inhuman willpower to persevere. Perseverance and endurance were precisely Ji Tianqing's strength. More than a month had passed in the secret chamber of the imperial palace, but only 3.5 days had passed in the outside world. At the same time, 1,000,000 miles north of Zhongzhou, the ancient and majestic northern Dingbei mountain range was still lying on the ground like a dragon, blocking the cold wind blowing from the northern border. The Heaven Dragon Pass, which had been an impregnable pass for thousands of years, was now in a completely different state. A few days ago, the huge canyon entrance was still shrouded by a golden light shield with a radius of 200 miles. Now, after operating for more than a month, the ancient divine formation had finally exhausted its power and completely shut down. With the disappearance of the huge golden light shield, the Heaven Dragon Pass lost its most powerful defense. Only a colorful light shield with a radius of 100 miles was still protecting the pass. This defensive formation with a radius of 100 miles was jointly set up by the Emperor and several human commanders. This was also a primordial soul realm formation, which was formed by the superposition of 6 magical formations, and had a powerful defensive power. The 500,000 soldiers under Long Yunxiao's command were still guarding the Heaven Dragon Pass under the protection of the formation. However, the faces and eyes of many soldiers were filled with nervousness, uneasiness, and worry. Everyone knew that no matter how powerful the formation set up by the Emperor and the commanders was, it could not be stronger than the ancient divine formation. Once the Devil Emperor led the army to attack the Heaven Dragon Pass, this defensive formation would not be able to hold on for long, and would be broken by the Devil Emperor. It was not that the soldiers looked down on the Emperor's strength and did not have confidence in him. It was just that the Devil race was too powerful, and the Devil Emperor's strength was too terrifying, which made the hundreds of thousands of soldiers feel deep hatred and fear. It was now evening, and the setting sun was hanging in the sky, slowly setting. The dark red afterglow of the setting sun, like a layer of blood, sprinkled on the Heaven Dragon Pass, making the atmosphere in the pass more oppressive and somber. Long Yunxiao and Xiao Han stood side by side in the sky above the Heaven Dragon Pass. The two faced the biting cold north wind, looking at the Devil Race's camp hundreds of miles away, expressionlessly observing. They saw that the black gas and devil clouds above the Devil Race's camp had become more and more solid. Even though they were hundreds of miles away, the two could clearly sense the soaring devil chi and killing intent from the Devil Race's camp. Moreover, from time to time dazzling blood-red lights would flash out from the dark brown mountains, cutting through the dark sky. The two were silent for a while, then Xiao Han said in a solemn tone, "Since the previous war, the Devil Race's camp has been quiet for 10 days, and the Devil Race's army has not launched any attack. But in the last 3 days, the devil chi in the camp has become thicker, and blood-red lights would flash out from time to time. Every night at midnight, the devil chi of the Devil Race's camp would be heard. If I'm not wrong, I'm afraid the Devil Emperor has already led his army back to the camp." Chapter 14:14. Long Yunxiao nodded at Xiao Han's words. He gloomily looked to the north and said in a low voice, "The battle in Dongyang Valley has ended several days ago. The Demon Emperor must have returned to the camp. As for the 10 million troops that attacked Dongyang Valley, they should be here soon even if they haven't returned yet." Tianxing sent a message saying that the palace lord slaughtered more than 3 million demons in Dongyang Valley. Therefore, the devil army that had attacked Dongyang Valley should still be around 6 million strong. Adding the 16 million demons in the camp, the Demon Emperor still has 22 million demons under his command. However, the Demon Emperor wounded the palace lord and took away a divine item, which is the core of a divine body. The Demon Emperor must have sped up the sacrificial ceremony and condensed the divine body as soon as possible so that the ancestor demon god can be reborn. In my opinion, the changes in the camp in the past 3 days are most likely due to the Demon Emperor condensing the divine body. Alas! Xiao Han sighed helplessly and said in a deep voice, "When those 6 million soldiers return to the demon camp, the Demon Emperor will successfully condense his divine body, and the ancestor demon god will be reborn. Then the demon army will definitely attack the Heaven Dragon Pass. At that time, the Heaven Long Mountain Pass will fall, and the more than 2 million soldiers of our clan will be wiped out, won't they?" Long Yunxiao didn't answer, which was a tacit agreement. In fact, he and Xiao Han both knew the next battle plan and knew that the Emperor had already made arrangements and plans. But when they thought of the tragic scene that was about to unfold, they felt indescribably depressed. The sun was about to set below the horizon and the world was getting darker and darker. But at this moment, a dazzling crimson blood light suddenly lit up in the demon camp that was shrouded in demonic chi. Whoosh! It was a huge pillar of light that was dozens of miles thick and as big as a mountain peak. It rushed up from the ground and pierced through the dark clouds, blotting out the sky with dazzling crimson light. Instantly, the sky within a radius of 10,000 miles was illuminated. It was illuminated in a dark red color, like the sunset glow. The crimson light that covered the world also contained a touch of dark purple that quickly spread in the sky. Immediately after, an earth-shattering roar came from the depths of the demon race's camp and exploded in the sky. Roar! It was a low and dignified roar, like the angry roar of a god, but also like some kind of solemn and dignified announcement. The deep and vigorous sound waves surged in the sky like muffled thunder, spreading in all directions and not disappearing for a long time. That terrifying roar could be heard clearly within a radius of 100,000 miles. The closest Devil Race encampment was trembling from the impact of the sound waves, and the mountains and rivers within 1,000 kilometers were shaking violently. In the vicinity of Tian Long Mountain Pass, it was as if a super earthquake had taken place. The mountains and rivers shook and collapsed, and countless cracks appeared on the ground. The earth-shaking might made all the human soldiers pale in fright. They stared at the sky in fright. In the human camp, the Imperial Emperor, the Imperial Tutor, and the commanders were all alarmed. Everyone used the teleportation technique one after another. They streaked across the sky like streamers and arrived in the sky above the Tian Long Mountain Pass at the fastest speed. Swish! Swish! The Emperor, Imperial Preceptor, and the others landed beside Long Yunshao. The commanders were not in the mood to greet each other. They all looked up at the dazzling blood-red sky and observed solemnly. Soon, 10 breaths of time passed. The loud sound reverberating in the sky gradually faded away. The blood-red light pillar that rushed out of the Devil Race encampment still pointed to the sky and did not dissipate. The blood-red light was as vast as the ocean, covering the sky for thousands of miles. The dark purple demonic light slowly gathered together and condensed into a huge figure in the sky. It was a colossal figure that was over 10,000 feet tall, like a towering mountain that could hold up the sky. As time passed, the purple light became more and more condensed, and the figure became clearer and clearer. The Imperial Emperor, Long Yunshao, and the others gradually saw that it was a devil god that could penetrate the heavens and the earth. It had the largest and most majestic body. Its appearance was like a giant, but it was not related to the human race at all. 2 thick and sturdy legs were wrapped in a layer of purple scales, as if it was a natural armor. For muscular arms covered in black scales that were as sharp as a dragon's claws. It also had 3 huge heads. Each head had a bloody mouth full of fangs and 3 blood-red or purple eyes. In addition, it had 6 pairs of blade-like wings on its back. They were half purple and half red and looked very strange. Although it was only the shadow of a devil god, it was as if it was real, as if a real god had descended. It sat high in the sky, looking down at all the living beings in the world. Its 9 demonic eyes were filled with the cold light of slaughter and death. A powerful, boundless, and mysterious power radiated from its body, descending from the sky and suppressing everything within a radius of 10,000 kilometers. Everyone in this area was enveloped by that invisible pressure. Their hearts were filled with deep reverence and fear. Some of the weaker human soldiers felt a chill run down their spines. Their hands and feet were cold, and their fighting spirit was disintegrating. Most people did not dare to look up at the devil god. They could not help but lower their heads, and their hands and feet were trembling. Only the Emperor, the Imperial Tutor, and a few commanders could still stand high in the sky, looking at the devil god's shadow. It seems that this is the legendary ancestor devil god. The Emperor murmured in a low voice, with his hands behind his back, looking coldly at the devil god's shadow. There was no fear in his heart. His eyes were still shining, filled with a strong fighting spirit. The Imperial Tutor waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and said in a heavy voice, "The ancient devil god, the legendary death god, is about to be born." Xiao Han, Long Yunshao, and the others understood what this meant. They all clenched their fists. The death god is about to be reborn. The Devil Emperor will soon lead the army to attack Heaven Dragon Pass. Everyone, the war is coming. Let's get ready as soon as possible. After a few words of discussion, they left one after another and returned to the camp to prepare the army. Unknowingly, a whole day passed. The blood-colored pillar of light that shot into the sky and the demon god's shadow that reached the heavens and the earth stood tall in the sky, illuminating a radius of 10,000 miles. 24 hours passed, but the light pillar and the devil god's shadow still did not dissipate. In the evening of this day, a muffled rumbling sound came from the devil race's camp. Millions of devil race soldiers were shuttling through the underground tunnels and devil caves, gathering quickly. The Emperor and the commanders quickly noticed this change and immediately realized that something was wrong. In 2 hours at most, the devil race army would attack Heaven Dragon Pass tonight. Therefore, the Celestial Emperor hurriedly ordered the commanders to gather all the human soldiers and prepare to fight the enemy. Even if everyone knew that the human race could not stop the devil race army's attack. Chapter 14-15. Inside the Tian Long Pass, in the human camp, more than 2 million human warriors were lined up neatly, divided into 6 armies, waiting for orders. The blood-red light that blotted out the sky shone on the armor of every soldier. It was a ghastly sight, and it gave off a tragic and stirring feeling. In the middle of the camp, there was a high platform which was built a few days ago. At this moment, a few powerful warriors were standing on the platform. They were the commanders and leaders of the human army. The Emperor, who was wearing a purple dragon robe, stood in the middle of the platform at the front, facing the 2 million warriors. The Imperial Tutor, who was wearing a white robe and holding a horsetail whisk, stood 2 steps behind the Emperor with a solemn face. Behind him were the 4 Directions Divine Generals, Yun Zhongqi and Long Yunxiao, the 6 commanders. In this solemn and serious atmosphere, over 2 million soldiers stood quietly, not making even the slightest noise. In the human camp, only the sound of the north wind blowing the tents and the flags on the ground could be heard. The Emperor looked around, then withdrew his sharp eyes and said in a deep and majestic voice, "Warriors of our race, the time of life and death has come. Even if the demon clan has 20 million warriors, even if the demon ancestor is about to come out, even if the Tian Long Pass will be breached tonight. So what? Since ancient times, for tens of thousands of years, when have we ever been afraid of the demon clan? Even if there is a slim chance of survival, we will fight to the last moment, and swear to protect every inch of our territory. Outside the pass, the bells and drums are still ringing, and the blood of our ancestors has not dried yet. Now, with the demon slayer's sword in hand, we will repay the heavens with our lives." The Emperor's voice was like the morning bell and the evening drum. His voice reverberated in the camp endlessly. Especially the last few sentences, every single word was resolute and carried a powerful and resolute imposing aura, and it was filled with an indomitable valiant and domineering aura. The morale of the human soldiers had been low, but at this moment, the blood in their veins had been stimulated, and their eyes were shining with a strong fighting spirit. Clang! The Emperor pulled out the human sovereign sword, pointed at the Tian Long Pass in the north, and shouted loudly, "Warriors, follow me to the war and kill the demon clan." More than 2 million soldiers were infected by his soaring killing intent. They raised their swords and sabers and shouted in unison, "Kill! Kill all the demons!" After a short while, the 6 commanders led their soldiers and rushed to the Heaven Dragon Mountain Pass in a majestic manner. The Emperor and the Emperor's preceptor stood in the sky above Tian Long Pass with hundreds of imperial guards, ready for battle. The sky was getting darker, and the north wind was getting colder. Outside Heaven Dragon Pass, the muffled noises that came from the devil camp grew louder and louder. As the ancient bugle horn of the demon race sounded, countless armored demon race soldiers rushed out of the underground demon cave. In just a few short moments, the black mass of the demon race army spread out like a tide. The sound of the bugle horn reverberated throughout the demon race's main camp, signaling the start of the war. Millions of devil soldiers, divided into several armies, rushed towards the Heaven Long Mountain Pass while shouting "Kill." At the front of the army, there were still hundreds of thousands of undead skeletons and tens of thousands of ghosts and demons. In the sky above the demon race army, there were hundreds of demon race experts and generals. Demon Commander Dark Knight led 2 demon commanders and 4 blood gods, sons of the soul refining realm in an overbearing manner, heading straight for the Heaven Dragon Pass. Kill! Charge! Kill all the human reptiles! Tonight we must break the Heaven-long Pass, kill all the humans and leave no one alive. The roars of the demon race experts exploded in the sky one after another, arousing the hot blood and killing intent of the demon race soldiers. As time went by, the speed of the demon race army became faster and faster, and their momentum reached the extreme. Inside the Heaven-long Pass, hundreds of thousands of human race soldiers, looking extremely solemn, released their power with all their strength, urging the power of the defensive formation. More than 2 million human race soldiers were waiting behind the Heaven-long Pass. Once there was a casualty among the soldiers guarding the pass, there would be someone to replace them immediately. In short, the human race soldiers swore to protect the Heaven-long Pass. Several commanders had already issued orders that the army only needed to defend the Heaven-long Pass, and never go out to meet the demon race army. Half an hour passed by quickly. The sky was dark, and the cold wind in the night sky was even more bone-chilling. The demon race army finally rushed to the outside of the Heaven-long Pass and launched a murderous attack. Hundreds of thousands of undead skeletons were the first to rush to the pass, waving their weapons and madly attacking the defensive light shield. The human race soldiers in the formation immediately urged the defensive formation, releasing all kinds of magic attacks to kill those undead skeletons. The Emperor, the Imperial Tutor, and several commanders in the sky also took out their weapons and magic weapons, using their secret techniques to kill the skeleton army below. Heaven-burning jade fire. Frost tornado. Heaven-covering ice blade. All kinds of powerful magic attacks lit up with colorful brilliance, illuminating the night sky. With a loud rumbling sound, hundreds of thousands of undead skeletons were quickly killed. Immediately afterward, millions of demon race soldiers rushed over, releasing earth-shattering light blades to kill inside the Heaven-long Pass. Dozens of miles away, there were tens of thousands of elite demon race warriors, using a joint battle formation, working together to cast magic. They released attacks comparable to those of nascent soul stage powerhouses, which turned into bloody light blades that could split the sky and earth, fiercely slashing at the Heaven-long Pass. Demon Commander Dark Knight and several Blood God's sons also cast secret techniques and joined the battle. The curtains of a bloody and tragic battle were thus drawn. Millions of demon race soldiers desperately attacked the Heaven-long Pass, using all kinds of magic attacks. Hundreds of thousands of human race soldiers, relying on the protection of the nascent soul formation, tried their best to resist the attack of the demon race. The Four Directions Divine Generals, Yun Zhongqi, and the others were soon targeted by Demon Commander Dark Knight and the others. More than a dozen soul-refining stage powerhouses fought fiercely in the night sky. They released all kinds of magic attacks that could destroy heaven and earth, causing the sky to fall and the earth to crack, and the brilliance illuminated hundreds of miles. The shock waves that spread out from time to time shattered the surrounding mountains and rivers. Many demon race soldiers, after being swept by the shock waves, were smashed to pieces and died on the spot. As the spiritual leader of the human race and the most powerful person on the battlefield, the Emperor did not take the initiative to attack. He held the Emperor's sword in his right hand, his body standing in the night sky like a mountain, looking sharply into the depths of the demon race's camp. An invisible domineering aura was rising, and his robe and cape fluttered in the night sky. He was waiting for someone. His target was the ancient demon Emperor. Only when the demon Emperor appeared would he really use the Emperor's sword and burst out with his strongest strength. Soon another hour had passed. Shouts and screams shook the sky on the battlefield, and all kinds of collisions and explosions were deafening. The battle was extremely tragic. Broken bones and corpses were piled up under the Heaven-long Pass, and blood gathered into a stream, flowing on the ground. Chapter 14:16. Roar. A ferocious roar exploded in the sky above the demon race's camp, shaking the heavens and the earth. Formless sound waves spread out, creating a violent hurricane in the sky. The blood light that covered the sky flew to the outside of Tian Long Pass in the blink of an eye. Swoosh! The monstrous blood-red light suddenly converged and condensed into a tall and sturdy figure, standing still 5 kilometers in front of the Emperor. It was a demon race man in a purple robe. He was more than 3 meters tall, and his skin was dark and covered with black dragon scales. He had 2 huge heads, and his face was resolute and dignified. His snow-white hair danced in the wind, and a pair of black azure wings behind his back, surrounded by a dense demon chi. He was like a demon azure that walked out of hell, exuding an extremely powerful and bloodthirsty aura. Without a doubt, he was the leader of the demon race, the ancient demon emperor. The demon emperor stood proudly in the night sky and looked at the emperor with a cold smile. Long Xuanquan, we meet again. It's been 1,000 years, and you still haven't forgotten the grudge of breaking your bones, right? The demon emperor's tone was full of sarcasm. The emperor's face darkened, and his eyes were filled with hatred and murderous intent. He said coldly, "Demon Emperor! 1,000 years ago you brought me pain and humiliation, and I will remember it forever. Back then, you were so powerful that you broke all my bones and made me lose face, and I was powerless to take revenge. But today, I will avenge my past humiliation and tear you to pieces." As he spoke, the Emperor held the scabbard of the human sovereign's sword tightly with his left hand, and the hilt with his right hand. He slowly pulled out the golden blade. The demon emperor looked at him with a cold smile and said disdainfully, "Ha ha ha! It seems like you have forgotten the pain after your wounds have healed. How dare you talk nonsense to me? If that's the case, not only will I kill you, but I will also crush all your bones and flesh before I kill you." After saying that, the demon emperor raised his wide sleeves and struck out a mysterious spell with his palms. Instantly, 2 balls of fiery red light were released and blasted toward the demon emperor. The emperor roared with murderous intent. He immediately waved the emperor's sword and slashed out a few sword lights that could split the sky and earth, blasting towards the 2 balls of blood light. Bang bang! The sword light and the blood light collided, creating a deafening sound that reverberated in the night sky. The Imperial Emperor's figure flashed and teleported hundreds of miles away, arriving in the distant sky. The demon emperor laughed maniacally. He turned into a streak of blood-red light and chased after him, engaging in an intense battle with him in the sky. Both of them were primordial spirit realm supremes and were the strongest experts on the battlefield. Only the sky thousands of miles above the ground was their battlefield. High up in the night sky, there was a terrifyingly low temperature. Astral winds that were as sharp as swords and blades. There was also an invisible power of heaven and earth that fiercely suppressed everything. Only Essence Soul Realm experts could move about and fight in the heavenly constellation atmosphere. Both of them used their secret techniques and released destructive attacks as they fought fiercely high up in the sky. Loud rumbling sounds that sounded like divine thunder from the 9 heavens reverberated in the sky, spreading for tens of thousands of miles. Dazzling spell lights tore through the night sky like lightning, crisscrossing and flashing in the night sky. Both of them exchanged more than 100 blows. After a fierce clash, they quickly separated and faced each other from 20 miles away. The demon emperor's face was slightly pale and his hair was a little messy. After panting for a while, his dermic powers and aura stabilized. He formed a spell with his left hand and held the emperor's sword in his right. He pointed it at the demon emperor and shouted expressionlessly, "Demon Emperor, I heard that you have obtained a heaven-defying divine artifact that is extremely powerful. If you don't use it now, I'm afraid you won't have another chance." The demon emperor's purple robe was also a little messy. His long hair was wrapped around his neck, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. After exchanging more than 100 blows with the demon emperor, he didn't gain any advantage. Instead, he was at a disadvantage. After all, He had only recovered his strength to the 5th level of the primordial spirit realm, which was not much different from the Demon Emperor. However, the Demon Emperor was holding the Emperor's sword and he didn't use any divine artifact. Naturally, he was slightly injured. Hearing the Demon Emperor's words, the Demon Emperor raised his sleeve to wipe the blood at the corner of his mouth. He grinned and sneered, "Ha ha, Long Xuanquan, since you already know that I have a heaven-defying divine artifact, you should know what happened to Gu Daoxian, right? I still want to play with you a little longer. I didn't expect you to be so eager to die." As he spoke, he slowly raised his left palm and a ball of dazzling purple light surged out of his palm. Amidst the purple light, a dark purple ruler that was about 5 feet long and as wide as a palm gradually appeared. It was an exquisite purple ruler. It was straight and narrow and its surface was engraved with ancient divine runes and symbols that flickered with purple light. Even if the Demon Emperor didn't activate the ruler's power, the ruler would still emit an extremely cold yin qi that slowly spread in the night sky. The night sky within a radius of dozens of miles started to distort silently as if it couldn't bear the weight and was about to be torn apart by the might of the ruler. Without a doubt, this was the heaven-defying divine artifact, the great yin soul-severing ruler. The Demon Emperor placed his left hand behind his back and held the soul-severing ruler in his right hand. He exuded a strong sense of confidence as he smirked and swung the ruler at the Demon Emperor. "Long Xuanquan, suffer my wrath." Soul-severing. A dazzling purple light blade shot out from the great yin soul-severing ruler. It instantly pierced through the dark night sky and arrived in front of the Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor's face turned very serious as he stared at the purple light blade. He didn't dare to let his guard down at all. When the light blade came, he didn't hesitate to block it with the Emperor's sword. Bam! Amidst the deafening noise, the giant purple blade struck the human sovereign's sword hard, bursting out golden and purple light that blotted out the sky and earth. The Demon Emperor was immediately sent flying. The Emperor's sword also trembled incessantly and let out a mournful buzzing sound. He was sent tumbling for dozens of miles. His face turned pale as he spat out a mouthful of blood. His primordial spirit was also enveloped by the extremely cold yin qi as his entire body trembled. Before he could regain his footing, the Demon Emperor teleported over and swung the great yin soul-severing ruler again. Soul-severing. A purple light blade that was 1,000 feet long instantly traversed the night sky and struck the Demon Emperor in the waist. The Demon Emperor couldn't resist at all and was sent flying again. His magic power shield was shattered into pieces, and a large crack appeared on his armor and golden cloak. However, these were only external injuries. What was more serious was that his primordial spirit was severely damaged and his consciousness was a little blurry. "Ha ha ha ha! Long Xuanquan, do you know the power of the great yin soul-severing ruler now?" The Demon Emperor laughed maniacally as he chased after Long Xuanquan and swung the soul-severing ruler again. Explode. Chapter 14:17. At the critical moment, the Emperor cast a spell and took out a simple and modeled bronze mirror. It was a round bronze mirror with ancient patterns carved on its edges. This ancient bronze mirror was an immortal soul-level magic treasure. Its origins were extremely ancient, and it exuded an aura of vicissitudes that only ancient treasures possessed. The Dharch injected his Dharma power into it and turned it into the size of a millstone, blocking in front of him. Boom! The purple light shot out from the tiny soul-severing ruler hit the bronze mirror, creating an earth-shattering sound that spread for 1,000 miles. Crack! With a crisp cracking sound, the ancient bronze mirror was shattered on the spot, exploding into hundreds of fragments that scattered in all directions. This ancient essence soul Dharma treasure was destroyed just like that. A primal-level quasi-god artifact was actually so weak and unable to withstand a single blow from a true heaven-defying god artifact. Fortunately, The Dharch sacrificed an essence soul Dharma treasure to stop the Fiend King's attack. He finally recovered and quickly used a secret technique to summon his essence soul Dharma form. Universe as me, Dragon Court Dharma form. The Emperor's voice was as loud as a bell. Dazzling golden light burst out from his body, surging with incomparably powerful divine power fluctuations. A giant golden shadow as large as a mountain immediately lit up the night sky behind him and let out a bright golden light. It was a giant that was 1,000 feet tall and wearing golden armor. It had a body as majestic as a mountain, 8 huge and sturdy arms, and a dark golden dragon head. Each arm was carved with ancient runes that contained the crystallization of 10,000 years of human wisdom and sealed with hundreds of secret techniques. On the giant golden dragon head, 2 coral-like golden dragon horns flashed with golden light, and the power of heaven and earth constantly move. Without a doubt, this was the Thearka's essence soul Dharma form, the legendary 8-armed Dragon Court Dharma form, which represented the supreme power and power. It opened its wide dragon mouth and spewed out endless golden fire towards the Fiend King. The night sky within a radius of 10,000 miles was illuminated by the dazzling golden flames. The terrifyingly high temperature dispelled the horrifying astral wind and cold air. Even the mountains within 10,000 miles were quickly melted by the golden fire and turned into lava and ashes. However, the Fiend King didn't seem worried at all. He was still full of confidence, and an overbearing energy came out of his body. He waved his hand and swung the Tyene soul-severing ruler, releasing purple light and demonic mist. Swish, swish, swish. The purple light and demonic mist that blotted out the sky immediately enveloped the glazed fire. The two energies cancelled each other out and soon dissipated. Ha ha! Long Xuanquan, stop resisting. Even if you detonate your essence soul Dharma form, you won't be able to hurt me. The power of the Tyene soul-severing ruler is not something you can imagine. Die. The demonic emperor sneered arrogantly. He kept swinging the Tyene soul-sundering ruler, slashing out huge purple blades that blotted out the sky. He launched a ferocious attack on the emperor. He hurriedly used his essence soul Dharma form and used all kinds of secret techniques of heaven and earth. The Dragon Court Dharma form extended its 8 arms and used 8 essence soul Dharma treasures to unleash a barrage of attack. Some of the arms wielded sabers, swords, and axes, slashing out 10,000 feet long golden light blades to meet the oncoming purple light head-on. Some of the arms opened their glazed bottles and black water poured out of them. 2 of the arms waved ancient battle flags and struck a huge ancient bell to unleash divine sense shockwaves to attack the Fiend King's divine sense. The Celestial Emperor fought the Devil Emperor with all his might, and once again, they engaged in an intense battle. After about a quarter of an hour, the two of them had exchanged over 100 blows and the victor was finally decided. The Fiend King was sent flying again with blood gushing from his nose and mouth. His robe was tattered and his hair was disheveled. His Dragon Court Dharma form had also expended 60% of its power, and its golden light had dimmed. 2 of the Dharma form's arms had been severed and a crack had appeared on its massive dragon head. However, the Fiend King wasn't injured. He used the Tyene soul-severing ruler to block the Fiend King's secret techniques and continued to pursue the Fiend King. As time passed, the Fiend King's injuries worsened and his essence soul became weaker. He knew very well that even the Prefecture Lord was no match for the Fiend King, let alone him. It was only a matter of time before he was defeated. All he could do was to stall the ancient Fiend King and stall for time as much as possible. The later Heaven Dragon Pass was breached, the more preparations Zhongzhou could make, and the more human warriors they could gather. Thus, the Fiend King changed his battle strategy and stopped fighting the Fiend King head-on. He used the Dragon Court Dharma form to unleash all kinds of secret techniques to stall the Fiend King. This way, even if the Fiend King had the Tyene soul-severing ruler and could unleash devastating attacks, He wouldn't be able to kill him in a short time. He fought as he retreated. With Tian Long Pass as the center, he shuttled and dodged in the sky. Before he knew it, an entire night had passed. The Fiend King held on stubbornly and was still fighting the Fiend King. The Fiend King didn't seem to be in a hurry to kill him. He was confident and kept injuring and repelling him while mocking him. The Fiend King didn't understand why the Fiend King was doing this. He only thought that the Fiend King wanted to slowly torture and kill him to vent his anger. It wasn't until the sun rose and he saw the scene outside Tian Long Pass that he finally understood. The sky around Tian Long Pass was shrouded in a torrential blood light. The battle on the battlefield had yet to end. Earth-shattering shouts and explosions could be heard incessantly. After a night of fierce battle, the Fiend army had lost nearly 2 million people. The human army had also lost more than 800,000 people. The 100-kilometer canyon outside Tian Long Pass was littered with corpses. In many low-lying areas, the corpses piled up into small mountains and the blood converged into rivers of blood. It was a scene of carnage both inside and outside Tian Long Pass. Thick blood energy floated in the air and condensed into blood clouds and blood mist, giving off a pungent smell of blood. That was the blood energy and souls of millions of corpses. It was a great tonic for the fiend race. But what was strange was that when the biting cold north wind blew, the blood mist that shrouded the world didn't dissipate, nor did it flow to the south. Instead, it surged up into the sky. The Celestial Emperor looked up along the surging blood mist and saw the gigantic blood-colored pillar of light and the towering figure of the demon god. The endless blood mist rushed towards the fiend god's shadow like a tide and was swallowed by it. Seeing this scene, the Fiend King was startled for a moment. Then, he understood something and his expression changed. Xitigarbha has been in the netherworld for 30,000 years. The primordial fiend god hasn't fully awakened. It still needs 3 more days to absorb endless blood energy and souls to condense a Dharma body and become a primordial spirit sovereign. No wonder the Fiend King wasn't in a hurry to break through Tian Long Pass. Chapter 14:18. The Celestial Emperor saw through the Demon Emperor's intentions and schemes. He did his best to use a secret technique, slashing out a dozen sword lights that could split the heavens and earth, slashing at the sky-reaching pillar of light and the demon god Phantom. No matter what, he had to do his best to stop the Demon Emperor's plans and destroy the ancestral demon god's avatar. But things did not go as he wished. The Demon Emperor swung the extreme soul-severing ruler again and again, slashing out giant purple blades that covered the sky, intercepting him from the side. With a series of muffled bangs, the sword light that the Imperial Emperor had slashed out was shattered into pieces that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. He was unwilling to give up and wanted to attack again, destroying the Demon Emperor's schemes. But the Demon Emperor kept him occupied, launching fierce and tyrannical attacks, forcing him back again and again. Soon, the Celestial Emperor was riddled with wounds and could only fight the Demon Emperor. With the extreme soul-severing ruler, the Demon Emperor was in an undefeatable position. No matter what the Celestial Emperor used, no matter what trump cards or treasures he used, he could not defeat the Demon Emperor. All he could do was keep the Demon Emperor occupied, stalling for time until the final moment. Inside and outside the Heaven Dragon Pass, on the battlefield of several hundred li, the great battle was still ongoing. Endless demon soldiers charged at the Heaven Dragon Pass without any regard for their own safety, attacking the defensive array with all their might. The human soldiers held on with all their might, constantly providing energy for the defensive array. As time passed, the defensive array was constantly broken and repaired. In the process, countless human soldiers charged onto the battlefield, ultimately sacrificing their lives. Millions of incomplete corpses were lying outside the Tian Long Mountain Pass. Countless broken limbs and blood rained down. What a tragic scene of purgatory on earth! At the same time, the central state city was completely silent and bleak. The biting cold northern wind whistled, sweeping up yellow leaves and dust, scattering them all over the central state city. The empty streets and alleys, the dust-filled plazas that no one cleaned, and the many magnificent palaces had all become dim and lifeless. Other than the soldiers who were still guarding the city walls, there were very few civilians left in the city. At most, there were 300,000 to 500,000 people. In the past, the prosperous central state city had been home to 3 to 5 million martial artists and civilians of various races. Now, there were only 300,000 to 500,000 people left. 9 out of 10 houses were empty. Inside the imperial residence, in the quiet imperial palace, Ji Tianxing, the mansion master, and the others were still in the secret chamber. Only 2 days had passed in the outside world, but another 20 days had passed in the secret room. Ji Tianxing spent a total of 20 days, enduring all kinds of pain and torment before he finally broke through the shackles of the essence soul realm. That night, he finally crossed the invisible chasm and successfully reached the first firmament of the essence spirit realm. At that moment, the monstrous amount of spiritual energy that he had accumulated inside his body gushed out like a flood and spread out in all directions. Boom! Amidst an invisible muffled sound, a golden light burst out from his body, illuminating the entire secret room. At that moment, his robes fluttered violently as he erupted with a peerlessly violent aura. The dazzling golden light illuminated the sky outside the secret chamber, illuminating the sky for thousands of miles. The entire imperial residence was enveloped in the golden light. The dazzling golden light surged violently, constantly condensing into various scenes. There were divine beasts and birds the size of mountains, dense ancient trees and strange flowers, wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, as well as the vicissitudes of life. It was especially mysterious. Divine Master Blackfeather had already returned to the imperial residence with more than 30 princes. Everyone was recuperating in their respective palaces. The sudden appearance of the heaven and earth phenomenon immediately woke everyone up. When everyone saw the golden light and the phenomenon, they revealed looks of disbelief and shock. Such an earth-shattering phenomenon lasted for an entire day without dissipating. In the secret chamber, Ji Tianxing's body was also undergoing tremendous changes. After he broke through to the first firmament of the essence soul realm, the heaven and earth phenomenon appeared. His body was also rapidly condensing an essence soul dharma characteristic. If he had not cultivated the mystic technique that the mansion master had imparted to him, he would naturally not have been able to condense an essence soul dharma characteristic. He would have needed a long period of cultivation and experimentation. Take Shui Ruoyu for example. Although she was at the first firmament of the essence soul realm, she had never condensed an essence soul. Ji Tianxing was different. He had already comprehended the true self-dharma characteristic that the abode master had imparted to him. By cultivating this mystic technique, he could use the essence of the mystic technique to condense his own unique essence soul dharma characteristic. That was the dharma characteristic that was most suitable for him. For 10 whole days, he had been circulating the true self-dharma characteristic mystic technique. He adjusted the dharmic powers in his body, his divine soul, and his dharmic swords, constantly fusing them. This process was a little slow, but it was also extremely complicated and precise. There was no room for error or negligence. Unknowingly, 10 days had passed. Ji Tianxing's 9 divine soul dharmic swords, 1 divine soul golden sword, and his lifetime of dharmic powers were perfectly fused together, forming a ball of golden light that seemed to condense into a substance. Within the golden light, a mysterious white pearl was enveloped. It spun rapidly, undergoing a deep level of fusion and transformation. That pearl was naturally the mysterious heaven-mending pearl. Day after day passed. The golden ball of light gradually changed, clearly showing the appearance of an essence soul. It was a dark golden sword. The blade of the sword was moderate in length and slightly wider than an ordinary sword. The blade was covered with mysterious patterns. An ancient and mysterious pattern appeared on the hilt of the sword. Complicated lines outlined the appearance of a golden divine dragon and a fire phoenix. At the intersection of the golden hilt and the blade, there was a mysterious white pearl that was emitting a dense white light. That was the heaven-mending pearl. It had already fused with Ji Tianqing's essence, soul dharma characteristic. This simple and mysterious golden sword was Ji Tianqing's essence, soul dharma characteristic. It floated quietly in his mind. When he finished cultivating and saw the essence, soul dharma characteristic in his mind, he was stunned on the spot. Strange, other people's essence, soul dharma characteristics are in the form of giants like the eight-armed deity, the four-winged giant beast, or the six-eyed dharma eye. Why is my dharma characteristic so strange? It's actually a golden sword? What kind of essence soul dharma characteristic is this? What's the difference between this and the divine soul golden sword? Just as he was filled with doubts and muttering to himself, the essence soul golden sword in his mind suddenly changed. Swoosh! That dark golden essence soul golden sword suddenly turned into a small golden man. The golden man was a handsome and valiant young man. His appearance, and demeanor were exactly the same as him. There was no difference at all. When he frowned, the essence soul golden sword frowned. When he grinned, the essence soul golden sword grinned as well. In short, the essence soul golden sword was a miniature version of him. Wow, this essence soul is a little strange. It can change at will? Ji Tianqing was instantly interested. He used his mind to control the essence soul golden sword and tried to see if there were any other changes. With a thought in his mind, the dark golden nascent divinity immediately turned into 9 golden divine swords. Chapter 14:19. My primordial spirit Dharma idol is actually so amazing? Seeing the primordial spirit in his mind constantly changing, Ji Tianqing was instantly shocked. He only felt that it was unbelievable. When he cultivated the true self Dharma idol, he only formed the Dharma idol naturally according to his heart, talent, and the characteristics of his cultivation technique. Before the primordial spirit Dharma idol was successfully formed, he did not know what kind of Dharma idol he would form. Now that the Dharma idol was successfully formed, he realized that his primordial spirit Dharma idol was completely different from others. The true self Dharma idol that the Mansion Master taught me is really a marvelous cultivation technique. It actually allowed me to form such a strange Dharma idol. With a thought, I can make it change at will. It can become a small golden person or a golden divine sword. It can even split into 81 divine swords. In that case, when I use the divine lightning sword domain in the future, won't I be able to use the 81 golden swords as the foundation to increase the power of the domain? Thinking of this, he carefully examined the 81 golden swords. Indeed, he found that the golden swords contained the purple light of divine lightning. Moreover, the power of the heaven-mending pearl also filled the golden swords with mysterious and unpredictable power. This discovery made Ji Tianqing excited and full of anticipation. Great! The 9th heaven's divine lightning and the heaven-mending pearl are both powers that can restrain demon experts. Now that these two powers have merged into my primordial spirit golden swords, it will be much easier for me to deal with demon experts in the future. After breaking through to the primordial spirit realm, his strength had increased by several times. His dermic powers had also undergone a qualitative leap. The 9th heaven's divine lightning and the heaven-mending pearl had caused his primordial spirit to undergo miraculous changes, increasing his combat strength. If he encountered Devil Blood and Venerable Blood Killer again, he was 100% confident that he could kill them. After a long time, the heaven and earth phenomenon that illuminated the entire Emperor Manor dissipated. Ji Tianqing collected his thoughts and continued to receive the Mansion Master and the other threes imparting. Breaking through to the primordial spirit realm was far from enough. It was still not enough to fight against the demon emperor. The mansion master and the other three had only imparted about 30% of their powers to him. Of course, they had to continue imparting. Their goal was to impart their lifetime's powers to Ji Tianxing so that he could reach the level where he could kill the demon emperor. Ji Tianxing continued to cultivate, quickly refining the manor head and the other three manor heads' powers. Previously, he was only in the soul refinement realm, so the speed at which he received the energy imparting was very slow. It would take a very long time for him to refine it. However, things were different now. After he reached the primordial soul realm, he was like an abyss vortex, constantly devouring the Four's powers and rapidly refining them. With the passage of time, his martial Tao foundation stabilized. His strength began to increase rapidly as he headed towards the second firmament essence soul realm. A month had passed in the Dharch Palace's secret chamber, but only 3 days had passed in the outside world. That evening, the setting sun was like blood. The dark red afterglow sprinkled over the Tianlong mountain pass, illuminating the battlefield within a radius of several hundred miles. The battle lasted for 3 whole days. Finally, it was coming to an end. Blood clouds filled the sky, and no matter how strong the northern wind was, they would not disperse. That towering blood-red pillar of light and the gigantic demon god's shadow were still standing tall in the sky. On the battlefield below, it was an extremely tragic scene. The huge Tianlong mountain pass had long been destroyed in the war and turned into a huge crater. The mountain range within a radius of a few hundred miles had been reduced to piles of dirt and ruins. Dense cracks appeared on the ground, and many deep pits were scattered all over the ground. Countless human and demon corpses were piled up on the ground, buried in the deep craters or ruins. Most of the corpses were incomplete, and their flesh had rotted away, leaving behind only skeletons. The blood, qi, and essence of more than 5 million corpses had turned into blood clouds and blood mist that converged towards the demon god's shadow like a tide. The ancestor demon god needed to reach the heavens for 3 days and condense an avatar with countless blood, qi, and essence. Be it the blood of the human soldiers or the souls of the demon soldiers, they were all raw materials to condense an avatar. There was not much of a difference. This was the demon emperor's plan and conspiracy. In order to allow the ancestor demon god to be reborn, he would not hesitate to sacrifice millions of demon soldiers. The most terrifying thing about the demons was that they were not only ruthless to outsiders, but also to their own people. The battle was finally over. The Tianlong mountain pass was completely destroyed. The battle between the Empyrean Emperor and the Demon Emperor had long ended. The battle cries that resounded through the sky lasted for 3 days and 3 nights before finally dissipating. More than 2 million soldiers of the human clan were almost completely annihilated. Only 6 commanders, tens of imperial guards, over 200 human commanders and over 1,000 powerful human warriors were left alive, and they could still leave the Heaven Dragon Pass alive. But all of them were seriously injured and bathed in blood. Their injuries were very miserable. They had no time to treat their injuries. After retreating according to the order, they quickly gathered under the oath-taking platform in the middle of the camp. On the spacious and sacred oath-taking platform stood the Empyrean Emperor and the Imperial Tutor. Both of them were covered in blood. Their robes were torn and tattered, and their hair was disheveled. They looked very miserable. The atmosphere was very heavy and oppressive. The 1,000 or so people who were lucky enough to survive were also very despaired. Everyone was dejected, and their eyes were dim. The Empyrean Emperor's sword in his left hand, and raised his right hand to wipe off the blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. He ordered with a hoarse voice, "Soldiers, the battle is over. The Tianlong mountain pass has fallen. This was the result that was predestined. Everyone's mission has been completed. We have stopped the devil army for 3 days. From now on, everyone must hurry back to the central state city. I have already made preparations and arrangements. Our human soldiers will gather there and start the final battle with the devil army." The deep and majestic voice spread around the oath-taking platform. More than 1,000 human soldiers slowly raised their heads to look at the Empyrean Emperor. The fire of hope was reignited in their eyes. Then, the Empyrean Emperor took the imperial tutor and the others and left the oath-taking platform. They rushed back to the central state city in the south. The 6 commanders also took more than 1,000 survivors and followed them back to the central state city. At the same time, in the devil camp outside the Tianlong mountain pass, the 18 million demon soldiers were divided into 20 armies and lined up near the various mountain peaks. Everyone's blood was boiling. Full of excitement, they let out earth-shaking cheers and shouts to celebrate the victory of the war. "Our race will win! Kill all the humans! The Tianlong mountain pass has been destroyed. Soon, we will step into the central state and rule the entire Tianxian land. Your Majesty, the Devil Emperor is wise and mighty." Waves of cheers rose and fell one after another. They converged into a sound wave torrent that reverberated above the devil camp. The Devil Emperor stood proudly high in the sky. Looking down at the devil army that was cheering excitedly, a playful smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. After a long while, he withdrew his gaze and turned to look at the demonic god's shadow high in the sky. That demonic god's shadow had been in the sky for 3 days. It had absorbed the blood, chi, and soul of millions of soldiers. Chapter 14:20. About an hour later, the ancestral fiend god's blood demon avatar was finally condensed. Roar! The fiend god avatar, which had not moved for 3 days, was finally able to move on its own. It twisted its body a few times, stretched its arms and head, and let out an earth-shaking roar. The deafening sound spread over a radius of 10,000 miles. Then, the fiend god avatar opened its arms, as if it was embracing the sky, and laughed wildly. "Ha ha 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 ha! 30,000 years. After 30,000 years, this god has returned. The death god has returned to the human world, and darkness will once again envelop the world. Gods, do you see this? Only this god is eternal and immortal, undying and indestructible." The fiend god's wild laughter was filled with hatred and killing intent, as well as incomparable excitement and ecstasy. His thunderous voice reverberated fiercely in the sky, shaking the heavens and the earth for thousands of miles around. In the demon race's camp, more than 10 million demon soldiers raised their heads to look at the sky, looking at the ancestral fiend god with worship and reverence. The demon emperor in the sky was the first to bow, respectfully saluting the fiend god avatar. "Welcome back to the human world, ancestral fiend god, and revitalize our race." As the demon emperor's shout resounded through the sky, more than 10 million demon soldiers also knelt on the ground, saluting with great reverence. "Welcome back to the human world, ancestral fiend god, and revitalize our race. Heaven bless our race, and our race will sweep across the world and unify the world." The shouts of more than 10 million people converged into a terrifying sound wave, spreading in all directions. The earth within 10,000 miles shook as if an earthquake had occurred. After a long time, the fiend god avatar gradually shrank into a bloody light, retreating into the depths of the demon race's camp. After the bloody light entered the primogenitor altar, it immediately disappeared. Then, a tall figure in a black robe walked out of the primogenitor altar. This was the ancestral fiend god's true body, a body condensed from 4 divine items. In the sky above the surface, the demon emperor looked toward the south, and ordered with a booming voice, "All soldiers, listen to my order. After resting for half a day, we will march into the central province. Along the way, no matter if it was a village or a city, no one was left alive. Within 2 months, this emperor's army will descend upon Central Continent City." The army of over 10 million demons excitedly waved their weapons and shouted, "Yes, sir." Unknowingly, 5 days had passed. The emperor, the imperial tutor, and more than 1,000 survivors had all returned to the Central Plains. At the same time, the news that Heaven Long Pass had fallen and millions of human soldiers had been annihilated spread across the Central Plains. As early as 2 months ago, the hundreds of cities in the Central Plains were already in a state of panic. Most of the martial artists and commoners had already left the city in advance and fled to the south. Less than 10% of the warriors and commoners were left behind in the cities. Most of them were the defenders. Now that the news of Tian Long Mountain Pass's fall had spread, less than 10% of the cultivators and common people had given up their last glimmer of hope and fled to the south. The imperial emperor didn't return to the imperial court. Instead, he stayed in Central State City and used the city lord's mansion as a temporary commander's palace. This Central State City, which had been passed down through the ages, would be the site of the decisive battle between the human race and the demon race. After returning to Central State City, the imperial emperor first issued a series of orders. He first gave the order for the Central Continent 100 cities to abandon the various cities and gather in Central Continent City. In addition, the defenders of the 9 regions of the South and the recruited warriors also received his orders and rushed to Central State City. In addition to these orders, the imperial emperor also summoned the skilled craftsmen and array masters of the human race to strengthen the defenses of Central State City and construct a powerful defensive array. In just a few days, hundreds of thousands of warriors and craftsmen rushed to the deserted Central State City. Everyone was full of enthusiasm, wholeheartedly throwing themselves into the construction of the city's defenses. They were doing their best to resist the demon race and protect the territory of the human race. Every day, large amounts of martial artists and human soldiers would rush to Central Continent City from all directions. 10 days later, more than 5 million warriors and soldiers had gathered in Central State City. The empty houses and buildings were now occupied by many soldiers and martial artists. Thus, the imperial tutor and several commanders worked together to use a secret technique. Under Central State City, they constructed an underground city of the same scale. This underground city was extremely large, but the construction was extremely simple. It was built like a military camp, specifically used to house the great army of the human race. Several days later, the construction of the underground city was completed. The human race soldiers that arrived in Central State City were arranged to stay in the underground city. Apart from these important matters, the imperial emperor, the imperial tutor, and the commanders also had to worry about all kinds of trivial matters. For example, the warriors and soldiers that came from all over the world, how should they be arranged, and who would lead them? Tens of millions of warriors and soldiers were stationed in Central State City. How should they deal with the supply of provisions and cultivation resources? In short, Central State City quickly recovered its bustling scene. The voices of people were loud and bustling. However, the warriors and soldiers were not undisciplined. Everyone's morale was high, their nerves stretched taut. They maintained vigilance, ready to fight at any time. The imperial tutor and the commanders would also frequently mobilize the soldiers, having everyone mentally prepare themselves, vowing to live and die with Central State City. A month quickly passed. Tens of millions of warriors gathered in Central State City, as well as hundreds of thousands of martial experts and talented individuals. The city wall's defenses were doubled and several primordial spirit-level defensive formations were also completed, operating normally. The imperial emperor and the commanders, after exhausting themselves for so long, could finally properly rest and adjust their breathing. At the same time, the scouts on the front lines continuously sent news back to the city, reporting the latest movements of the demon race army. Heaven Dragon Pass was 1 million li away from Central State City. The demon race army was 18 million strong. Even if they traveled at full speed, it would still take them more than a month. Moreover, as the demon race army marched south, they plundered countless villages and cities, exterminating all life forms. According to the news from the scouts, the demon race army would need at least 20 days to reach Central State City. In other words, there was less than a month until the final battle. The situation in Central State City became more and more tense, the atmosphere becoming more and more oppressive. However, all of the human race soldiers believed that even the Imperial Emperor, the Imperial Tutor, the Son of Heaven, and the other leaders of the human race would defend Central State City to the death, fighting side by side with them. Even if they died in battle, they would have no regrets. A few days later, the Monster Emperor and Golden Dragon Emperor's secret messages also flew into Central State City, reaching the Imperial Emperor's hands. Chapter 1421. The atmosphere in Zhongzhou City was heavy and solemn. The divine masters and princes in the imperial residence were not idle either. After they had recovered from their injuries, they worked together to cast spells to strengthen the defense of the imperial residence. Zhongzhou City was the location of the final battle, and the imperial residence was the final fortress. Everyone was so busy that they almost forgot about the imperial palace in the depths of the imperial residence. It was not until noon that the imperial palace lit up with golden light that the divine masters and princes were awakened. Divine Master Yu was meditating in the spacious hall. He suddenly sensed the change in the weather and immediately opened his eyes. Swoosh! His figure flashed and teleported out. He stood under the eaves of the hall's entrance and looked up at the sky. At the same time, a few divine masters and more than 30 princes flew into the sky and looked up at the sky. They saw a golden pillar of light that was tens of thousands of feet tall shoot up into the sky and spread out in the sky. The dazzling golden light illuminated the heavens and the earth for thousands of miles. It almost lit up the entire imperial residence. The golden light emitted a powerful and sacred aura that shrouded the heavens and the earth. Everyone was in awe. Of course, that invisible pressure contained some kind of law. It was a powerful force of heaven and earth. It would not suppress the divine masters and princes, nor would it make them feel uncomfortable. Soon, the golden light in the sky spread out and formed a golden sea of clouds that was thousands of miles wide. Above the sea of clouds, the dark golden light condensed into a huge figure that stood tall. The god masters and princes could clearly see that the 30,000-foot-tall figure was a handsome young man. He stood in the golden sea of clouds, and his tall figure seemed to be connected to the heavens. He formed a seal with both hands and made a mysterious pose. His left hand pointed to the sky and his right hand pointed to the ground. He exuded a godlike aura. The martial emperors and martial monarchs' sons were astounded when they saw the beast's appearance. Many of them even exclaimed, "Oh my God! It's Ji Tianxing? He just broke through to the primordial soul realm a month ago and caused a heaven and earth phenomenon. What kind of divine art did he cultivate now? The heaven and earth phenomenon this time is even more powerful than when he broke through to the primordial soul realm. He must have cultivated a peerless divine art. Great! Ji Tianxing has broken through to the essence soul realm and even mastered a peerless technique. He'll definitely be able to deal with the ancient fiend emperor. Ji Tianxing, this fellow, is indeed the #1 monster since ancient times. He has only been in the monarch residence for a few years, but he has already become a primordial soul supremacy. Many god-tier masters and crown princes gathered together. They were all shocked and exclaimed as they whispered to each other. However, everyone was excited and proud of Ji Tianxing. Almost no one was jealous of him. After all, he had already become a primordial soul supreme and stood at the pinnacle of the continent. Everyone could only look up to and worship him. They didn't even have the right to be jealous of him. Divine Master Blackfeather stared at the huge figure high in the sky. His single eye shone brightly. His hands in his sleeves were trembling because of excitement. Great! Tianxing had finally condensed his avatar. This fellow just broke through to the essence soul realm not long ago, but he actually condensed his avatar so quickly. There's hope for Middle Continent City. God Teacher He, you knew very well that only those who possessed the Dharma form and Dharma body were the true primordial spirit supremes. Only then would they have the means to wield great power. In the secret chamber deep in the Dharch Palace, it was filled with dazzling golden light. Almost nothing could be seen clearly. Ji Tianxing was still sitting on the frost jade bed. All the pores on his body had opened up and released dazzling golden light. He was like a god, sacred and majestic. His aura was so powerful that it could shake the heavens and earth. In fact, after he had condensed his avatar, he could indeed control the heavens and earth. This was because he had cultivated the ultimate skill that the Mansion Master had imparted to him. What he cultivated was the heaven and earth Dharma body. More than a month had passed in the outside world. He had been in seclusion in the secret chamber for 14 months. Ever since he reached the second level of the Essence Soul Realm, he had been cultivating his heaven and earth Dharma body for the past few months. Fortunately, he had cultivated diligently for a few months. With the support of the Mansion Master and the other three, he had successfully cultivated his avatar. Now that he had the Dharma form and heaven and earth Dharma body, he was a true primordial soul supreme. Furthermore, his strength had reached the third level of the Essence Soul Realm. However, this was still not enough. He didn't stop cultivating. He continued to refine the Four's cultivation and continued to raise his strength. However, he had been in a state of cultivation all this time and was completely unaware of the changes in the outside world. He didn't notice that the Mansion Master, Emperor Yi, and the other three who had been imparting their cultivation to him had already undergone tremendous changes. 80% of their lifetime's cultivation had been imparted to Ji Tianxing. They had become extremely old and weak. Their hair and beards were as white as snow. Their faces were old, and their skin was shriveled and wrinkled. They didn't look like the top experts of the continent at all. Instead, they looked like the elderly in the mortal world who had one foot in the grave and were about to reach the end of their lives. A month later, Xiao Wentian and Emperor Yi had imparted their lifetime's cultivation to Ji Tianxing. The two of them slowly retracted their hands and sat on the frost jade bed weakly. They looked at each other and forced a smile. Our mission has been completed. Yes, we have no more regret. Their voices were low and weak. After they finished speaking, they slowly closed their eyes. There was no longer any cultivation in their bodies. They had already become ordinary mortals. Without the support of magic, their bodies that had experienced thousands of years quickly collapsed and dissipated. With a soft rustling sound, their bodies quickly weathered and turned into specks of light that dissipated in the air. Eldest senior brother, little junior sister, we'll take our leave first. When their weak voices sounded, their bodies had completely dissipated and completely disappeared. There was an ancient saying that said, "Born from heaven and earth, return to heaven and earth. Born as Yang, destroyed as Yin, from beginning to end." After the two of them died, they turned into specks of light and returned to heaven and earth, blending into all things in the world. Perhaps, after a few years, they would reincarnate and be reborn again. But at that time, they would have long forgotten everything about their previous lives. It would be a new beginning. 2 months later, Shui Ruoyu had finished imparting her cultivation. She had turned into a white-haired mortal old woman. Her body had also become illusory and transparent. Like sand, she quickly weathered and turned into specks of light that dissipated. But her expression was very serene. Her eyes were fixed on Ji Tianxing as she murmured in a low voice, "A teacher for a day, a teacher for life. If there is a next life, I am willing to serve you by your side. Eldest senior brother, I'll take my leave first." As her weak voice sounded, her body completely dissipated. She had finally returned to heaven and earth. In the secret chamber, only the Manor Lord and Ji Tianxing were left. They were still imparting their cultivation. Ji Tianxing's strength had reached the peak of the third level of the primordial soul realm. He was about to break through to the 4th level. Unknowingly, 3 months had passed. Chapter 1422. The Manor Lord slowly retracted his palms and ended the spell. The golden light that enveloped him gradually dissipated as well. He sat beside Ji Tianxing with a serene expression, his gaze fixed on Ji Tianxing. At this moment, his hair and beard were white, and his face was old and haggard. He was no different from an ordinary old man. However, his expression was calm and benevolent, and his gaze was filled with relief. He was silent for a long time before his body gradually turned illusory. From the bottom to the top, he began to turn into specks of golden light that dissipated in the air. When his body disappeared, his head and white hair gradually dissipated as well. He sighed with melancholy. It's a pity that I won't be able to drink a mouthful of the vast sea wine that Master brewed personally. No one knew why he had uttered such a sigh before vanishing into thin air. He had lived for 1,000 years, so what had he experienced? From the beginning to the end, he was like a mystery that no one could understand. Shui Ruoyu, Yi Hengchuan, and Xiao Wentian did not understand, and Ji Tianxing was even more so. Regardless, the strongest person in the Tianxian continent, the Manor Lord Gu Daoxian, had dissipated and returned to heaven and earth. The lifetime cultivation of the Manor Lord, Emperor Yi, and the others had been refined by Ji Tianxing. He had successfully reached the 4th tier of the Essence Soul Realm, and his combat strength had been greatly enhanced once again. However, he did not end his cultivation and continued to study the Tao of Kenshin. Although the Manor Lord and the other 3 had imparted their lifetime's worth of cultivation and secret techniques to him, they had also mastered the Tao of Kenshin. He had condensed his essence soul, Dharma idol, and Dharma body. However, he had never forgotten that the Tao of Kenshin was the source of his martial arts. In the past, he was only at the spirit tempering realm and cultivated the 1st and 2nd levels of the Tao of Sword Soul. Now that he had reached the Essence Soul realm, it was time to cultivate the 3rd level of the Tao of Sword Soul. Swoosh! His Essence Soul entered the Kenshin tomb and appeared in the cold wilderness, standing near the 18 mysterious tombstones. The 9 tombstones on the left were still empty, but the 9 tombstones on the right had undergone subtle changes. The 2nd tombstone was originally engraved with more than 100 mysterious and ancient characters. That was the 2nd level of the Sword Soul Tao. Now, the seal script on the tombstone had disappeared. A few lines of ancient characters appeared on the 3rd tombstone. Ji Tianxing walked in front of the tombstone and stared at the words on the tombstone at a close distance, carefully studying them. A few hours later, he was able to recognize all the characters and memorize them in his heart. Then, he looked at the 2nd tombstone beside him and had a strange thought. Back then, when I was cultivating the 2nd level of the Sword Soul Tao, I accidentally touched the 1st tombstone and was sucked in by it. I accidentally discovered an alternate dimension with a heavenly tome pavilion inside. Now that I've cultivated to the 3rd level of the Sword Soul Tao, I wonder if the same thing will happen to the 2nd tombstone? Thinking of this, he reached out his hand and touched the 2nd tombstone. When his palm touched the black and cold tombstone, the tombstone lit up with a layer of faint golden light. Shwa! The mysterious golden light immediately enveloped him. He only felt his primordial spirit tremble and was sucked into the tombstone by the golden light. The next moment, his primordial spirit entered the tombstone and came to an alternate dimension. This was a mysterious and vast space. The sky was in all directions and under his feet was a white sea of clouds. In the thick white clouds in front of him, a white jade stone bridge was faintly discernible. The white jade stone bridge was very old and carved with exquisite patterns and patterns. He did not know what they meant. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing was shocked and a smile appeared on his face. As expected, this alternate dimension is very similar to the Heavenly Tome Pavilion. I wonder where the stone bridge is connected to? With a heart full of doubts, He stepped across the white jade stone bridge and walked into the depths of the sea of clouds. After a while, he saw the scene in front of him clearly. In the white sea of clouds, there were 99 steps of white jade stone stairs. At the end of the stairs stood a golden pagoda that was 100 meters tall. The pagoda was divided into 3 levels and was octagonal. The eaves that were like crescent moons spread out upward and were paved with glazed golden tiles. It looked very magnificent. The eaves of the octagonal eaves were carved with lifelike dragons and phoenixes that spread their wings and were about to fly. The door of the pagoda that faced the white jade stone bridge was tightly shut. The door that was 100 feet tall was wide and solemn. The black stone door revealed a sense of mystery and heaviness. There was an ancient aura that came from the vicissitudes of life. On both sides of the stone door stood 9 statues. Each statue was an awe-inspiring human guard, wearing silver armor and a golden cape, with a divine weapon hanging on his waist and an ancient halberd in his hand. Although the faces of these statues were covered by armor, they exuded a domineering and majestic aura. This scene was almost the same as the one in the Heavenly Tome Pavilion. Ji Tianqing became more and more expectant. His gaze fell on the lintel of the door. He saw that on the wide black lintel 3 ancient golden seal characters were engraved. He observed for a moment before he recognized the 3 large characters. Divine Weapon Pavilion. I didn't expect that the second tombstone would hide an ancient Divine Weapon Pavilion. The Heavenly Tome Pavilion collected tens of thousands of books and secret manuals. Could it be that this Divine Weapon Pavilion collected all kinds of divine weapons and magic treasures? Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with anticipation. His eyes also became bright. He hurriedly crossed the sea of clouds and walked to the door of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. He stretched out his hands and pressed on the heavy stone door. The 2 stone doors were carved with golden dragons and fire phoenixes. They were very lifelike. There was neither a door knocker nor a mechanism to open the array on the door. However, Ji Tianqing had the experience of entering the Heavenly Tome Pavilion. He pressed his palms on the golden dragon and fire phoenixes. Suddenly, the 2 stone doors lit up with a dazzling golden light. The golden dragon and fire phoenixes also seemed to come alive. After a glance, they quickly drilled into the stone door and disappeared. When Ji Tianqing first entered the Heavenly Tome Pavilion, he was quite surprised to see this scene. Now, he was used to it. Following a muffled creak sound, the 2 stone doors slowly opened. A bright and dazzling golden light, as well as an ice-cold and dazzling cold light, immediately shone out from the crack of the door, enveloping Ji Tianqing's figure. He was full of anticipation. He stepped through the door and entered the main hall on the first floor of the pagoda. The spacious and bright main hall was at least 100 feet in radius. The surrounding walls were lit with gemstones and bright lights, emitting a dazzling brilliance. He walked to the middle of the main hall and stood still. He looked around and suddenly frowned. It was because the scene in the Divine Weapon Pavilion was not what he had expected. He originally thought that there would be many cabinets in the Divine Weapon Pavilion to display various divine weapons and magic treasures. However, the entire main hall was empty. There was no counter at all. On the ground of the main hall, there was a huge ancient array carved on it. Chapter 1423. Ji Tianqing's gaze was attracted by the ancient bronze cauldron. The design of the cauldron was very simple and clumsy. It was squarish and angular, appearing solemn and sacred. This ancient cauldron had 3 legs, 4 horns, and 8 ears. Countless patterns were carved on the cauldron, forming mysterious patterns one after another. Ji Tianqing walked around the cauldron and observed it closely. He only felt that this cauldron exuded an ancient aura. It faintly had a majestic and domineering aura that suppressed the heavens and earth. It also had an unfathomable sense of mystery. When he walked to the east side of the cauldron, he saw that there were 2 ancient black characters carved on the cauldron. The characters were vigorous and powerful, like the edge of a sword, revealing an incomparably fierce aura. 9 heavens! Ji Tianqing silently repeated these 2 words, secretly guessing. Could this ancient bronze cauldron's name be 9 heavens? Unfortunately, this was only his guess and could not be confirmed for the time being. He walked around the cauldron and returned to his original position, carefully observing the surroundings. The ground of the main hall was 100 feet wide, and it was an ancient and mysterious array. This giant bronze cauldron was right in the center of the array, and was the core of the array. Although the array had not been activated, the bronze cauldron was cold and lightless, without the slightest bit of temperature. But Ji Tianqing was very clear that the mysterious array beneath his feet was very profound and powerful. It was very likely to be a true god-level array. That ancient bronze cauldron must also be an extraordinary treasure. After a long while, he turned and walked towards the east side of the main hall. On the sturdy and thick wall, there were obviously many hidden compartments, used to store things. The mysterious array on the ground and that ancient cauldron seemed to be used for refining pills or refining weapons. This divine weapon pavilion should not be a place to store divine weapons and dharma treasures, but more like a workshop to forge divine weapons. This thought flashed across Ji Tianqing's mind, and he vaguely understood the purpose of the divine weapon pavilion. When he opened a few hidden compartments and saw the things stored in them, he was even more certain of this guess, because the things stored in the hidden compartments were all rare and precious metals and ores, as well as all kinds of unknown strange materials. These things were obviously used to forge divine weapons and magic treasures. Ji Tianqing opened one secret compartment after another along the wall, checking the refining materials inside. Half an hour later, he finished counting. There were 360 secret compartments carved into the 4 walls of the main hall on the first floor, storing more than 300 kinds of refining materials. There were only a few materials that he had heard of and could possibly exist in the Tianxian land. Most of the materials were things that he had never seen or heard of before. He didn't even know the grades, origins, and uses of the materials. He saw that in the corner of the main hall, there was another staircase that led to the second floor of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. However, when he stepped onto the golden jade stairs, he saw that there was a huge door at the end of the stairs. That was the door leading to the second level. There were runes engraved on it. It was obvious that there was a powerful seal. He didn't even understand the grade of the array and the method of setting it up, so it was impossible for him to break it. Since he couldn't enter the second floor, he could only move around on the first floor. His emotions had completely calmed down, and all the anticipation in his heart had dissipated. Originally, I thought that there were some powerful divine weapons stored here that could help me deal with the Demon Clan's elite warriors and the Demon Emperor. I didn't expect that there was a large amount of refining materials and a 9th heaven cauldron here. It was a place to forge weapons and magic treasures. Unfortunately, I don't know anything about those refining materials, and I don't know how to open the array and control the 9th heaven cauldron to refine weapons. To me, this divine weapon pavilion is temporarily not of any use. Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered a few words gloomily. At this time, a voice that he hadn't heard for a long time sounded in his mind. Who said that it's useless? Suddenly hearing this low and vigorous voice, Ji Tianqing's spirit was instantly shaken. He quickly asked, "Burial of Heaven, you have finally awakened after sleeping for half a year?" Burial of Heaven said with a calm tone, "If there was enough time and the situation wasn't so tense, of course I would be willing to slowly recover. But time is running out. In this half a year, I can only do my best to absorb energy and recover as soon as possible." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Hearing you say this, there should be good news. How is your recovery now?" "About 40%. Burial of Heaven replied and added, "You have contributed to this. If you hadn't constantly snatched soul crystals for me, I wouldn't have recovered so quickly." Ji Tianqing nodded with relief and said with a smile, You've recovered about 40%. Even if the broken sword is still a half-step divine weapon, you are comparable to a primordial soul-level magic treasure. By the way, you said that this divine weapon pavilion can be used. What's going on? Burial of Heaven said in a serious tone. The Divine Weapon Pavilion is the place where Kenshin forges divine weapons and refines magic treasures. And now I'm still a soul-level magic treasure, unable to break through to the primordial soul level. If I can recover to the primordial soul level, it will definitely be of great benefit to you and help you increase your battle prowess by several times. If you didn't open the Divine Weapon Pavilion, you would have to search for materials all over the world and return to the Sun-Moon Furnace to help me recover to the primordial soul level. Now it's convenient, all of this can be done in the Divine Weapon Pavilion. After listening to Burial of Heaven's explanation, Ji Tianxing was immediately shocked and asked with joy, "Burial of Heaven, do you mean that you can forge a sword body in the Divine Weapon Pavilion and recover to the primordial soul level? There is an ancient bronze cauldron here, and more than 300 kinds of materials. Unfortunately, I don't know how to open the formation and can't distinguish the materials." Before he finished, Burial of Heaven said with certainty, "It's okay if you don't know, I can teach you how to open the formation and choose the materials. The Nine Heavens Cauldron is Kenshin's divine weapon, and this formation is also a real divine formation. With your strength, you can't understand it, let alone control it. However, you don't need to study this divine formation, you just need to know how to open it." After receiving its affirmative answer, Ji Tianxing was even more delighted and hurriedly nodded. "Since that's the case, then it's easy. We still have 4 months, and we'll try to help you recover to the primordial soul level as soon as possible." Burial of Heaven didn't waste any time and said calmly, "4 months is enough, you can go and choose the materials first. I need 6 kinds of materials: glazed fire true gold, silver feather illusory spirit stone, 9 nether iron, sacred flame glazed stone." It told Ji Tianxing in detail about the appearance and characteristics of the 6 kinds of materials. Ji Tianxing opened the secret compartments in the wall one by one, looking for the 6 kinds of materials it needed. The grades of these 6 kinds of materials, among the more than 300 kinds of materials, were only below average, and weren't particularly rare. Ji Tianxing only used half an hour to find all 6 kinds of materials. Chapter 1424. Under the guidance of the Burial of Heaven, Ji Tianxing only used 4 hours to successfully activate the array. Of course, this divine array was incomparably profound. It was still not something he could comprehend and control. All he could do was activate this divine array. As for how the divine array operated, what mysteries it contained, what structure it was, and so on, it had nothing to do with him. After the divine array began to operate, the ground within a radius of 100 feet lit up with golden light. Seal characters and mysterious symbols that covered the sky and earth surged out. Endless ancient characters and symbols, like butterflies, flew up and surged toward the Nine Heavens Divine Cauldron like a tide. The huge Nine Heavens Divine Cauldron also released a sacred golden light. Many patterns and characters appeared on its surface. Inside the Divine Cauldron, the void divine fire was born. It turned into a black-purple cloud and started to spin inside the cauldron like a vortex. An invisible force filled the entire hall, causing Ji Tianxing to feel the pressure double. Sweat poured down his body like rain. "Tianxing, go and cultivate in peace. I will come out of seclusion in 3 months." The Burial of Heaven instructed before flying into the Nine Heavens Divine Cauldron and into the black-purple void divine fire. Ji Tianxing followed its instructions and put the 6 refining materials into the divine cauldron. Then, he quickly left the hall. Swoosh! After leaving the Divine Weapon Pavilion, he returned to Kenshin's tomb and appeared in front of the black tombstone. Next, what he needed to do was to comprehend the 3rd level of the Sword Soul Path and continue to cultivate in seclusion to increase his strength. His primordial spirit returned to his body and began to comprehend cultivation techniques in peace. He worked hard to increase his strength. Previously, the mansion master had told him that the cultivation resources of the four of them were enough to support the operation of the secret room for 2 months. 2 months in the outside world was 20 months in the secret room. He still had 4 months. He had to use this time to increase his strength as much as possible. In Central State City, the situation was getting more and more tense. The scouts at the front lines would send back the latest news every day, reporting the movements of the demon army. 3 days ago, the demon army was 150,000 miles away from Central State. Along the way, they destroyed 3 cities and slaughtered hundreds of thousands of fleeing civilians and martial artists. 2 days ago, the demon army was 130,000 miles away from Central State. And now, the Devil Race's army was only 100,000 kilometers away from the Central Plains. The human army in Central Continent City could already clearly see that the northern skies were covered in a layer of black energy, as well as wisps of blood light flickering about. The Demon Race army came closer and closer. Central State City was in imminent danger. The number of the human army gradually increased to more than 13 million. Central Continent City's defensive fortifications were doubled, and the might of the formations was also raised to the peak. Countless soldiers and martial artists were ready to fight at any moment. Soon, another 5 days had passed. This time, there was no need for the scouts to report the news. The Imperial Emperor, the Imperial Tutor, and the human experts could clearly see the situation in the north. The 10 million demon army had already reached Central Continent City, stopping 10,000 li to the north. The mighty army of Devil Race soldiers was like a vast black tide, carrying with it a monstrous devil chi and blood chi. The Devil Race army stopped and set up camp on a plain 10,000 li away. While recuperating and organizing the army, they quickly built a Devil Army camp, constructing underground devil caves and tunnels. When dusk arrived, the sky to the north of Central State City was covered in black clouds, turning into a dark zone. Howling northern winds blew over, carrying with them strands of devil chi, as well as a strong smell of blood and killing intent. The human soldiers in Central State City all realized a problem. The territory north of Central State City had already completely fallen. The decisive battle that would decide the fate of humanity was about to arrive. However, the Devil Race army had traveled a long way, so they were not in a rush to attack. They set up camp outside Central State City, resting for an entire 3 days without launching an attack. However, tens of thousands of Devil Race scouts and scouts were always circling around Central State City, constantly monitoring the movements in the city. Both sides had set up their battle formations inside and outside Central State City. There were already no secrets to speak of, both sides clearly aware of the other side's military strength. Regardless of whether it was the human or Devil Race soldiers, they all understood a problem. If nothing unexpected happened, the human army would be defeated without a doubt. They would not be able to defend Central State City. As long as the continent's most sacred city fell, the human imperial court would quickly be destroyed. At that time, the end of the human race would arrive. When night fell, Central State City began to sparsely light up. Inside the dignified city lord's mansion, the discussion hall was brightly lit. More than 10 human experts were currently gathered in the hall, discussing important military matters with the Imperial Emperor. The Imperial Emperor sat at the head seat, the Imperial Tutor standing to the side. 6 people stood on the left side of the hall, the 4 directions Divine General, Yun Zhongqi and Long Yunxiao. On the right side of the hall stood 7 soul refinement expert. These were all martial experts from the common people, recruited by the Imperial Court to resist the Devil Race army. Some of them were the leaders of powerful factions, some of them were the sect masters or old ancestors of peak sections. Some of them were wild cranes that roamed the continent, and some of them were hermits that had not appeared in the world for several hundred years. Even the continent's famous divine doctor Bailey was standing in this group. The human race had billions of martial artists and a very deep foundation. Naturally, countless experts were born. In times of peace, many experts kept a low profile and did not reveal themselves. Now that the human race was at a critical juncture of life and death, even hermits that did not care about the world would step forward bravely. The imperial emperor looked at everyone with a dignified gaze and said in a low voice, "Everyone here is an expert of my race, and also a commander that stood out from millions of martial artists. At this time of crisis, when our race is at a critical juncture of life and death, everyone here is shouldering the lives of 13 million soldiers and the hope of 10 billion humans." It was clear that the 12 soul refinement experts and Long Yunshao in the hall were the commanders of the 13 million soldiers, each of them leading 1,000,000 soldiers. The imperial emperor paused for a moment, then continued, "As for everyone's duties, we will maintain the same. The 4 directions divine generals will guard the 4 city gates to prevent the devil race from attacking separately. The 1,000,000 soldiers led by the Son of Heaven will still be in charge of the 5 defensive formations. The other commanders will maintain a state of readiness at all times and will immediately support the other commanders if there is a situation. The Devil Race Army has already set up camp outside the city for 3 days. They should have recovered their strength by now. If this emperor is not wrong, tonight or tomorrow night, the Devil Race Army will launch an attack. After all, it is more advantageous for the Devil Race to attack at night." All the commanders nodded, agreeing with the imperial emperor's words. Only the Son of Heaven, Long Yunshao, frowned and thought for a moment, then said in a low voice, "Imperial Emperor, now that Central State City has been fortified by us, its defenses are very strong. If the Devil Emperor and the Ancestor Devil God do not attack, we will be able to resist the 10 million strong Devil Race Army. Even defending for a year is not a problem. However, once the Devil Emperor and the Ancestor Devil God attack, none of us will be able to stop them,